Chapter 640. Heavenly Net. Du Xiaofu's heavenly net flew out. At this moment, he could only use the Dao artifact Heavenly Net to block Si Ruofeng. The heavenly net flew out and immediately turned into a dazzling rune net, blocking Si Ruofeng's attack. Middle-grade Dao artifact, Heavenly Net. Si Ruofeng's eyes flickered. He seemed to recognize the Heavenly Net Dao artifact. His expression changed slightly. He raised his hand and a large knife appeared. Runes flashed, drawing in the energy of heaven and earth. It was actually a middle-grade spirit artifact. Brat, I'll help you, but you have to give me 200 energy copper talismans. After thinking for a while, Sima Muhan seemed to have made a decision. Earlier, she saw Du Xiaofu snatch at least 200 energy copper talismans from senior sister by Fu Rong and the others. She also wanted to get some benefits. She could not let that guy benefit alone. 100, Du Xiaofu hauled. 200 energy copper talismans were too much. If he did not need that woman's help, he would not be willing to give up even one. 150. Otherwise, you can slowly deal with Si Ruofeng yourself. Sima Muhan did not give up. Now that this guy needed her help, she naturally would not be polite with him. This could be considered a double cross. Okay, deal. Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and used the heavenly net to block Si Ruofeng's attacks. At this moment, he was also retreating. He had no choice but to agree to Sima Muhan's request. Do it. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had gone out of his way, Sima Muhan's beautiful face also became a bit more focused. After waving her hand at the 7 extraordinary youths behind her, her graceful figure flew out, and the single-armed crossbow appeared in her hand once again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 beams of light shot out from behind Si Ruofeng. 3 energy storms swept through like a hurricane. Sand and stones flew everywhere. Giant rocks exploded and the ground cracked. Help! The 7 youths behind Sima Muhan were all extraordinary individuals. When they saw Sima Muhan's signal, they immediately flew out to assist the 300 newly promoted inner sect disciples who were currently engaged in an intense battle. Among the 7 people, there were 4 who had just reached the Martial King realm. Judging from the oppressive aura on their bodies, they should be outstanding talents. Sensing the power of Sima Muhan's 3 light arrows, Si Ruofeng's expression turned grave. He had no choice but to give up on Du Xiaofu. Si Ruofeng immediately turned his head. 3 saber lights instantly swept out from the saber in his hand. They were accompanied by an incomparably sharp storm of aura as they blocked the 3 light arrows. The pressure on Du Xiaofu abruptly disappeared. The golden talisman wings on his back flapped and withdrew the heavenly net. Then, he immediately turned around and left. Brat, what are you doing? Sima Muhan shouted. When she saw Du Xiaofu's figure leaving, she thought that Du Xiaofu was going to escape. Hold him back for a while. I'll be right there. I'll leave him to you. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, he flapped his wings and flew out. He brought along an incomparably tyrannical aura. He was like a rock that flapped its wings and dived down. He had already rushed into the battlefield in the sky. Wherever he flapped his wings, a violent aura swept out and suppressed those who were ranked on the bronze ranking. Boom! With Du Xiaofu's intervention, those who were ranked on the bronze ranking were far inferior to Si Ruofeng. The strongest 3 seemed to be at the Martial King realm's mysterious beginner level. At this moment, under the suppression of Du Xiaofu, within a few rounds, the 3 strongest were severely injured by Du Xiaofu. Brat, you win! Sima Muhan shouted. That guy had actually left Si Ruofeng to her alone. She suddenly felt that she had been deceived. However, seeing that Du Xiaofu was actually going to help the other disciples under the premise that he was in trouble, Sima Muhan was also rather astonished. She secretly felt that although the bandit leader was savage, cunning, and despicable, he was quite loyal. Bang! An incomparably tyrannical aura swept out. After Du Xiaofu had severely injured another ranked on the bronze ranking, his figure left the battlefield. If you don't come, I won't care anymore. Sima Muhan shouted, but her charming face was as calm as before. Extraordinary splendor appeared in her light purple eyes. The single-armed crossbow in her hand continuously shot out light arrows. After 3 energy light arrows were blocked by Si Ruofeng, 6 light arrows were shot out in succession. Swish, swish, the 6 light arrows were shot out with blazing runes. One after another, the light arrows were shot towards Si Ruofeng like lightning, with layers of power stacked on top of each other. Si Ruofeng looked dignified as he condensed his hand seals. After a layer of celestial chi and a white armor condensed from mysterious runes covered his body, the blade radiance changed and turned into a blade radiance light shield. Layers of light shield floated in front of him, blocking the 6 light arrows. Rumble! The 6 light arrows collided with the blade radiance light shield. Layers of power exploded, and the blade radiance light shield cracked and shattered under the impact of the last light arrow. Si Ruofeng's figure was pushed back. The white armor of celestial chi runes on his body burst with light, resisting the pouring energy and the aftermath of the light arrow. However, his body was continuously pushed back in the process. If it wasn't for the white armor of celestial chi runes on his body, he would have suffered a lot. So strong. Du Xiaofu's figure came to Sima Muhan's side. The golden rune wings on his back had disappeared without him noticing. He was quite surprised. Sima Muhan's strength was as strong as before. She could actually push Si Ruofeng back in a head-on confrontation. At the same time that he was surprised, Du Xiaofu's face had already turned deathly pale at some point in time. He stood with his hands behind his back, but a smile appeared on his face. Swish! At the same time, Du Xiaofu's figure swept towards Si Ruofeng, who was retreating in front of him. A white divine light followed behind him, drawing in the energy of heaven and earth. Looking at Du Xiaofu's back, Sima Muhan was stunned. Si Ruofeng steadied his body and looked at Du Xiaofu rushing towards him. His face darkened slightly, and he condensed his hand seals again. Too slow, it's my turn. A faint voice came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. Then he stretched out his hands behind his back. 22 array flags appeared in his palms, emitting astonishing fluctuations, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. Du Xiaofu did not waste any time. The 21 array flags in his hands immediately flew forward. Just a moment ago, when Sima Muhan was holding Si Ruofeng back and heavily injuring the 5 bronze roll rankers, Du Xiaofu was preparing to condense a symbol array. 22 array flags, a 6-star mysterious symbol array. Swish, swish, 22 array flags instantly enveloped the space in front of him. Then, dazzling rune light pillars soared into the sky, immediately transforming into a powerful symbol array that enveloped the space. Coiling Dragon Array. Du Xiaofu lightly yelled. He had only recently comprehended the Coiling Dragon formation, a 6-star mysterious level attack formation. At this moment, he had just reached the level of a 6-star spiritual symbol master. There were probably not many people in the world who could set up a 6-star mysterious level formation. Rumble, the symbol array enveloped the space. Wind and clouds surged in the air. Under Du Xiaofu's early preparations, the symbol array successfully trapped Si Ruofeng within. The Coiling Dragon Array was not a defensive symbol array, but an absolute attack symbol array. Ao. As the symbol array was set up, there was a faint image of a giant dragon hovering above the symbol array. It was not easy to comprehend the Coiling Dragon Array. First, one had to comprehend the energy of the dragons. Otherwise, one would not be able to comprehend the Coiling Dragon Array. Pucci, after the symbol array was set up, Du Xiaofu's mouth once again overflowed with faint golden blood. His complexion became even paler. With his current cultivation, the difficulty of setting up a 6-star mysterious symbol array could be imagined. Sima Muhan stared at the symbol array. At this moment, she seemed to be nervous. She did not know if a 6-star mysterious symbol array could suppress Si Ruofeng. Be careful. A 6-star mysterious symbol array might not be able to trap Si Ruofeng. Sima Muhan then said to Du Xiaofu, who was retreating. She did not seem to have much hope for Du Xiaofu's 6-star beginner-level symbol array. I know it's hard to trap him, but it'll be enough to make him suffer. Du Xiaofu wiped the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. Si Ruofeng was a martial king at the Nirvana realm. He was also ranked 3rd on the Ancient Heaven Sect's bronze list. In Du Xiaofu's heart, He did not think that his symbol array would be able to truly suppress and trap Si Ruofeng. Du Xiaofu's goal was only to make Si Ruofeng suffer. If he wanted to break his symbol array, it would be enough to exhaust Si Ruofeng. You've underestimated Si Ruofeng. He has the talent of a human king, and there's an awakened storm martial vein in his body. He's not easy to deal with. Sima Muhan's delicate face was still serious. She was very clear about Si Ruofeng's trump card and strength. If it was a 6-star Nirvana realm symbol array, it would be able to make Si Ruofeng suffer. However, a 6-star mysterious symbol array was still slightly inferior to Si Ruofeng. Rumble, as Sima Muhan's voice fell, the engravings on the coiling dragon symbol array's coiling dragon shadow began to dim. The entire giant symbol array also began to shake. Crack crack, then, cracks began to appear on the symbol array. There was a terrifying energy fluctuation that was about to explode. The symbol array seemed to be about to collapse at any time. At that moment, Du Xiaofu's face suddenly turned serious. His squinted eyes were extremely solemn. Rumble, the symbol array shook, and finally, it completely cracked and shattered. As the symbol array shattered, violent energy swept across the sky. The surrounding space trembled violently. The surrounding mountains were also swept and shattered, and the ground cracked continuously. Chapter 641. Do you think a 6-star mysterious talisman formation can trap me? Ha! His arrogant laughter resounded in all directions from the terrifying shattered talisman formation. In the sky, a terrifying storm swept out. The storm swept in all directions, causing sand and stones to fly. Si Ruofeng's figure came out from the storm. His eyes were filled with a deep and boundless color. His body emitted a majestic light. There were talisman patterns crisscrossing on the surface of his body. He looked extremely mysterious. What a strong pressure! At that moment, all the inner sect disciples were shocked. Even the elites couldn't help but gasp as they felt the pressure. At that moment, a huge pressure spread out from Si Ruofeng's body. It came from the depths of everyone's blood and soul. It made their hearts tremble and they wanted to crawl. What a strong pressure from the martial vein! Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. The pressure from Si Ruofeng's martial vein wasn't any weaker than Lu Kuan's immortal martial vein. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to fight against the pressure from the martial vein. This is the storm martial vein. Si Ruofeng is going to use his full strength. Sima Muhan's faint purple eyes became serious. Si Ruofeng came out from the storm. His boundless eyes looked down at Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. His body seemed to have merged with the storm. It was extremely terrifying. The surrounding sky had already changed color. The mountains and rivers shook. Do you think the two of you can do anything to us? However, to be able to force me to use my full strength, it is enough to prove that you are not weak. Now, it's time to end this. Si Ruofeng laughed loudly and shouted in the storm. Then he condensed his hand and activated the storm martial vein. At the same time, he was also condensing the spirit of the vein. The mysterious runes of the talisman soared into the sky and finally, a huge crane soared into the sky and roared out from the storm. Chirp chirp, it was a huge green-white feathered crane. It was as if it was alive. When it flapped its wings, it was as if it was going to shake the mountains and rivers. Heavenly beast list, heavenly white crane. Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. That gigantic greenish-white feathered crane was a firmament white crane ranked on the heavenly beast list. Its ranking was even higher than the scarlet cloud dragon. In the middle of the storm, Si Ruofeng looked down at the white crane in the blue sky. His aura was rolling and he was incomparably powerful. Third place on the bronze rankings was so terrifying. How about I deal with Si Ruofeng's main body, and you deal with his meridian spirit? Sima Muhan's delicate face froze. At this moment, Si Ruofeng's full strength made her a little fearful. No wonder her father told her that the guys on the bronze list were definitely not weak. No problem, leave it to me. Du Xiaofu nodded. Although Si Ruofeng was terrifying and had shocked Du Xiaofu, it was not to the point where Du Xiaofu was truly afraid. One had to know that Du Xiaofu had yet to use his true trump card. Neither Pulse Soul nor Buying had made a move yet. Let's end this. The bronze list is not something you can contend against. As his voice fell, the firmament white crane phantom meridian spirit flapped its wings and a rolling aura directly spread out. The surrounding space froze, and under the pressure, the surrounding meridian spirits were all trembling. Peng descends to the 9 heavens. Suppress the evil beast. Du Xiaofu's figure swept out, golden light bursting out as he activated the Peng descends to the 9 heavens. It carried the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan and suppressed the firmament white crane like a supreme being. I've always wanted to see how extraordinary the storm martial vein is. Sima Muhan also moved. The ancient aura around her body fluctuated, and dazzling runes flew out like a rain of light, enveloping her body. At this moment, it was unknown what kind of trump card Sima Muhan had used, but around her graceful and exquisite body, ancient runes flew out one after another. Ancient runes revolved around Sima Muhan. Light overflowed in all directions, and her aura was ancient and unhurried, causing her graceful body to appear exceptionally holy. Walala, Sima Muhan directly used the ancient runes that enveloped her body to collide with the storm vortex that enveloped Si Ruofeng. When the two collided, there wasn't much of a sonic boom, but only a vigorous and dazzling light. The light rippled continuously, spreading out a shocking aura. Suppress. Not far away, Du Xiaofu's golden light surged, and the wings on his back were wide open. A domineering and terrifying aura filled the sky. He flapped his wings and swept across the sky, suppressing everything with his powerful aura. Gee! The firmament white crane screeched, and the runes soared into the sky. However, it seemed to be naturally suppressed by the golden-winged rock's aura. Its eyes were filled with fear, but it relied on Si Ruofeng's power to resist. Rumble! The firmament white crane and Du Xiaofu's Peng descends to the 9 heavens contended, and a series of golden runes burst out in midair. The aura swept out, and the surrounding heaven and earth trembled. A large number of mountains shook, and the ground cracked and collapsed. Heaven's net has wide meshes, but nothing escapes. Suppress. Du Xiaofu made his move again, and the heavenly net turned into runes that covered the sky and earth. It spread out in the sky, and finally enveloped the huge firmament white crane. The Peng descends to the 9 heavens, and the heavenly net immediately suppressed the huge firmament white crane in midair. Under the golden runes, it was gradually suppressed until it couldn't move at all. The mysterious runes on the heavenly net tightly bound the firmament white crane's feathers. GG, the firmament white crane screeched, but it couldn't escape at this time. Perhaps because the vain spirit was restrained, Si Ruofeng's muffled groan could be faintly heard from within the storm vortex. It seemed to be greatly affected because of this. Weng, Sima Muhan was pure and holy. She muttered some words, and she recited some unfamiliar runes. The unfamiliar runes were spat out from her mouth, and they turned into the sound of wind and thunder. Wave after wave of runes collided with the erupting vortex. At this moment, Sima Muhan was like an ancient goddess. She was untainted by the mortal world, and she was captivating all living things. The ancient, unfamiliar runes constantly collided with the erupting vortex, and the aura was suffocating. Finally, the storm vortex began to loosen. It started to slow down, and the ancient, unfamiliar runes finally condensed into an ancient energy hand. It directly tore apart the storm vortex, and Si Ruofeng's body was revealed. Bang! The ancient unfamiliar runes turned into a huge jade hand, and it directly slapped Si Ruofeng's body. It was as if it had fallen from the sky, moving and violent. Si Ruofeng spat out blood, and the storm around him dissipated. His body fell from midair, and he crashed heavily on a mountain below. Rumble! Si Ruofeng's body crashed down, and he destroyed the mountain from the top to the middle of the mountain. The terrifying gravel swept out like a storm, and the huge rocks were crushed into fine powder. Dust flew everywhere. The white crane in the sky screeched. At this moment, its aura was getting weaker, and it was finally suppressed to the point where it couldn't move. The ancient runes around Sima Muhan's body disappeared. Her beautiful figure was moving, but at this moment, her moving face was also extremely pale. Si Ruofeng crawled out from the gravel pile, and the corner of his mouth was dripping with blood. His hair was disheveled, and he looked extremely miserable. He looked at Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan, who were suppressing his pulse soul. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked dispirited and disappointed. You've lost. Hand over the energy copper runes on you, or I'll destroy your pulse soul. Du Xiaofu howled. On his pale face, there were bloodstains on the corner of his mouth. He curled up into a smile, and it made him look exceptionally ferocious at this moment. I've lost, Si Ruofeng said softly. His face was filled with disappointment and bitterness. He handed over all the energy copper runes on him in a desolate manner. The chaotic battle finally came to an end. Of the other 12 experts on the bronze list, Du Xiaofu had severely injured 5 of them. The remaining 7 were besieged by Hao Bian, Qiao Yingmeng, Beng Niu, and the other 9 talents, as well as more than 300 inner sect disciples. Although they had paid a price, they still managed to suppress the remaining 7. Since Si Ruofeng was robbed, the other 12 people were naturally no exception. They were all robbed clean. The overall ranking of these 12 people on the bronze leaderboard was much higher than the rankings of the previous teams that they had plundered. Therefore, they had more energy copper runes on them, especially Si Ruofeng. He had more than 800 energy copper runes on him, and no one knew where he got so many energy copper runes. In the end, the total amount of copper energy talismans looted from Si Ruofeng's team was close to 3,000. Du Xiaofu took advantage of the fact that Sima Muhan wasn't paying attention and put away half of the energy copper runes that Si Ruofeng handed over. Then Du Xiaofu gave each talent 90 copper runes. Among the 300 inner sect disciples, those who were severely injured were given 4 or 5 runes, while the rest were given 3 or 4 runes each. In the end, there were still 600 energy copper runes left. Du Xiaofu generously took out 150 energy copper runes and gave them to Sima Muhan. He said, 150 energy copper runes were your help. I'll give them to you now. I never owe anyone anything. Du Xiaofu, are you still going to make a move? Sima Muhan was angry. She glared at Du Xiaofu. She had worked hard to deal with Si Ruofeng, but this guy was only giving her 150. She wasn't stupid, so why would she agree? You are the beloved daughter of the sect leader. Don't tell me you don't have enough energy copper runes. Why are you robbing me? Don't glare at me. You said you would give me 150. But don't make a move. We'll split it half each. Chapter 642. Zhen Qingchun wakes up in the end. Du Xiaofu had no choice but to give 300 copper energy talismans to Sima Muhan. Only then was Sima Muhan satisfied. The 7 youths who came with Sima Muhan were all given copper energy talismans. The 4 heroes were also given the same amount as Judge Hao. They were all very happy. In the end, everyone supported each other and left. Only Si Ruofeng, Bai Fu Rong, and the others were left in shock. They couldn't regain their senses for a long time. Recuperate. Everyone recuperate. Tomorrow is the last day. Among the mountains, Du Xiaofu said to everyone on top of a tall mountain. After the battle with Si Ruofeng and the others, many of them were quite injured. Si Ruofeng is only 3rd on the bronze ranking. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu and said, Ji Oming is 2nd on the heaven ranking. He is also a human king. He is slightly stronger than Si Ruofeng and harder to deal with. However, he shouldn't be much stronger than Si Ruofeng. But the scariest one is the 1st on the bronze ranking, Yin Mochen. He is the hardest to deal with. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu frowned. Today, the 2 of them worked together to suppress Si Ruofeng. Sima Muhan even contributed more. This made Du Xiaofu worried that if he came tomorrow and suppressed Si Ruofeng today, Yin Mochen, Jiao Ming, and the others would not give up so easily. Also, the 4th and 5th on the bronze ranking would definitely be very strong. What is Yin Mochen's strength? After frowning for a while, Du Xiaofu asked Sima Muhan. Sima Muhan leaned against a rock lazily. Her slender legs were gently placed together, forming an extremely charming arc with the small extension that was not even enough to hold one's hand. She stuffed a pill into her mouth and said, he should be close to the peak of the martial king realm. Even on the gold roll, he can be ranked within the top 10. He is also a human king, heavenly talent. Martial king realm, nirvana peak. Du Xiaofu's gaze flickered. That person's cultivation levels seemed to be far from his. That person was Yin Mochen, who was ranked first on the bronze ranking. He had the talent of a Renwang and was at the peak of the nirvana realm in the martial king realm. His strength was absolutely terrifying. It seemed to be too difficult to deal with him. I'll do some breathing exercises to recover first. Senior brother Mo Chen won't be easy to deal with tomorrow. After Sima Muhan finished speaking to Du Xiaofu, she sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. At this time, there would not be any danger nearby. Sima Muhan had already found out from Judge Hao's mouth that Du Xiaofu had robbed a total of 7 teams in addition to the 2 teams led by Si Ruofeng and senior sister by Fu Rong. Also, the day before yesterday, she had heavily injured the team that was ranked 6th on the bronze rankings. What remained were the 2 teams led by Ji Ming and Yin Mo Chen. At this time, it was likely that the 2 teams would not be moving around. They would be waiting for the final battle at the giant rock plaza tomorrow. Seeing Sima Muhan meditating, Du Xiaofu looked up at the sky and left. At the peak of the mountain, Du Xiaofu found a natural cave. Du Xiaofu formed a hand seal and set up a few seals before entering the cave. In the cave, the barren ancient space appeared. Du Xiaofu directly entered the barren ancient space. Within the misty space of the ancient desolate space, Du Xiaofu stuffed a large amount of elixirs into his mouth and began to regulate his breathing. Dealing with Si Ruofeng had consumed a lot of his energy, and he had also suffered heavy injuries. Tomorrow he would be facing Ji Ming and Yin Mo Chen. This made it so that Du Xiaofu had no choice but to fight for time so that he could recover to his peak condition. Now, only the barren ancient space could buy him time. After an unknown amount of time, Du Xiaofu began to meditate. A small pagoda appeared in Du Xiaofu's bosom and emitted a faint light. Then, an illusory figure appeared in the misty space. Looking around, there was a slight surprise on his face. At dusk, the setting sun sprinkled golden light on the earth. The entire mountain range was covered in a cicada-like golden gauze, causing the vast mountain range to be covered in a faint sunset glow. In the familiar side hall, Protector Hao helplessly said to Sima Taxing with a stunned face, "That kid really gathered a large group of disciples and robbed most of the disciples on the bronze list." Joining hands with Muha, Si Ruofeng lost miserably and was also robbed. Now, I'm afraid that only Yin Mo Chen and Ji Ming can deal with them. There are 99 people on the bronze list, and the only ones who can still fight are Yin Mo Chen and Ji Ming's teams. Together, there are less than 20 people. It seems that kid really has some ability. I'm afraid he should have a talk with Martial Uncle Qin Yang. Sima Taxing said softly. A slight smile appeared on his handsome face. In the misty space, the time ratio here was 10 times that of the barren ancient space. Phew! A mouthful of turbid air was spat out from his abdomen. His eyes slowly opened and a faint golden light flickered. Then they became clear and deep. This is within the heavenly martial talisman realm, right? A familiar voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears. Du Xiaofu suddenly turned around. In his eyes, a familiar illusory figure appeared. It seemed to have grown up a little and was already 17 or 18 years old. However, the wretched expression in his eyes did not change much. Brother Qing Chun. Du Xiaofu immediately stood up in excitement. Who else could the illusory figure in front of him be other than Zhen Qingchun? What's wrong with you? You seem to have consumed a lot of energy and are still injured. Are you in trouble? Zhen Qingchun raised his eyebrows. In his inverted triangular eyes, his gaze was still as wretched as ever. Ever since he had taken the profound God pill, Zhen Qingchun had been in a deep sleep in the small pagoda. This period of time was not short. It's a long story. Too many things have happened while you were recovering. Du Xiaofu's expression gradually dimmed. Then, he told Zhen Qingchun about the destruction of the Du family in the imperial capital, the destruction of the Tianwu Academy, his obtaining of the barren ancient space, the establishment of the World Alliance, the disappearance of Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, and the little tiger. Finally, he had entered the ancient heaven sect. I didn't expect so many things to happen during this period of time. Hearing this, Zhen Qingchun sighed. Too many things had happened during this period of time. After a while, Zhen Qingchun's eyebrows twitched and he said to Du Xiaofu, "It's not a bad idea for you to join the Ancient Heaven sect now. It's one of the top forces in the Middle Continent and has a strong foundation. It should be able to help you improve in the future." "I'm in trouble right now." Du Xiaofu sighed. Afterwards, he roughly told Zhen Qingchun about what had happened in the giant rock space. He said, "I don't know how I offended those fellows on the bronze ranking. They actually want to deal with me. Why am I so wronged? Is it because my character is bad?" "Your character is bad? You've almost taken all the good things in the world." Zhen Qingchun could not help but roll his eyes at Du Xiaofu. This guy had the golden-winged rock technique, the ancient desolate space, the mysterious incomplete technique, the mysterious martial vein, and so on. Any one of these was a treasure that others could only dream of. However, he had all of them. His character was off the charts. After glaring at Du Xiaofu, Zhen Qingchun's eyes twitched. He said, "You just said that in this giant rock space, there are 2 human kings of the martial king realm at the Nirvana realm who should be looking for trouble with you. However, they only have 2 hours?" "That's right. Originally, I wouldn't be afraid of 2 human kings of the martial king realm at the Nirvana realm. If we really fight, it's not certain who will emerge victorious. However, the problem is that I can't risk my life. There are some things that I don't want to expose too early." Du Xiaofu was depressed. Even if Yin Machun and Ji Aoming were looking for trouble with him, it was still a competition between disciples of the same sect. Moreover, this was the Manchu's assessment. He could not risk his life with them. It would be fine if he risked his life. Du Xiaofu thought of the trump cards he had and was not afraid of the 2 of them. The problem was that he was not risking his life now. Moreover, his physical strength was indeed not as good as Yin Machun and Ji Aoming. If he encountered them, he would definitely be trampled. "Brother Qingchun, how's your recovery going? Why don't you lend me a hand?" Du Xiaofu looked at Zhen Qingchun. At this moment, he felt that Zhen Qingchun's illusory body was becoming more and more solid. His aura was also getting stronger. He was afraid that Zhen Qingchun must have recovered a lot during this period of time in the mysterious small pagoda. "Do you think that there won't be experts from the Ancient Heaven sect spying on us in the giant rock space? I'm afraid that once I make a move, someone will discover my existence. If I were at my peak, I wouldn't be afraid. However, with my current condition, I can't afford to offend the Ancient Heaven sect." Zhen Qingchun rolled his eyes at Du Xiaofu. After pondering for a while, he said to Du Xiaofu, "I have an idea. With your current spiritual strength, there should be hope." "What idea?" Du Xiaofu heard this and immediately became interested. "It's just stalling for time. It's not like we have to make a move. It's not impossible to do it in 2 hours." Zhen Qingchun's wretched eyes revealed a slight smile as he said, "However, in the end, it will depend on your own ability. If you don't have the ability, don't blame me when the time comes. It's good that you have an idea. No matter what, I have to give it a try." Du Xiaofu nodded. How could he not try if there was an idea? After all, he couldn't be trampled on by the guy on the bronze list tomorrow. Rumble, in the giant rock space, at midnight, the space changed again. After a few days, everyone in the giant rock space was no longer surprised by this change. Chapter 643. The next morning, on the mountain peak, many auras woke up and many of them had serious gazes. Today was the last day and the last 2 hours on the giant rock plaza. For everyone it might be a test. Time slowly passed. On the mountain peak, everyone was waiting for the purple-robed youth to appear. What is this guy doing? He even set up a symbol array. Doesn't he know that today is the 7th day? On the mountain peak, Sima Muhan curled her lips and glared at the symbol array on the mountain peak. Judge Hao, Xiao Yingming, Mo Wen, Running Bull, Mujia and the others were all waiting at the side. Swish, after an unknown period of time, when it was almost dusk, the talisman array on the mountain peak began to fluctuate. Then, the familiar purple-robed young man appeared. His face, which was still very pale yesterday, was now rosy. He recovered so quickly. That's too abnormal. Feeling the aura on Du Xiaofu's body, Sima Muhan's eyes secretly flashed with surprise. Then she stared at Du Xiaofu and pouted, "We should be reaching the giant rock plaza soon. Do you have any plans?" "No, we'll deal with whatever comes our way." Du Xiaofu smiled. "It's okay. I think senior brother Mo Qin and Ji O Ming are most interested in you. I'm not in a hurry." Sima Muhan curled her lips and turned to leave, leaving Du Xiaofu stunned. He immediately chased after her and said, "I say, little niece no, little sister Muhan, let's discuss this. Yesterday, you also dealt with Si Ruofeng. I'm afraid that Yin Machen and the others won't let you go. We're actually still on the same boat." The vast plaza was surrounded by rocks in the distance. It was like a forest of rocks. The space was desolate, and the vast stone plaza was covered with small rocks that were scattered all over the place. In the middle of the plaza, there was a huge rock. At this moment, there were many young men and women gathered around the rock. There were no less than 70 to 80 people. This group of young men and women were dressed in extraordinary clothes. Every one of them had an identical badge on their shoulders. However, at this moment, there were 50 or so people whose badges were dim. This proved that there was not a single energy copper symbol inside. These 50 or 60 people's faces were also extremely gloomy. They all lowered their heads, looking extremely helpless and dispirited. In the middle of the rocks, there were 20 or so young men and women. Their badges were all bright and their eyes were sparkling. Looking at the dozens of badges around them were dim and they were all covered in wounds. Wounds. I didn't expect our bronze roll to suffer such a heavy loss this time. Not only did we severely injure so many people, we were also robbed clean. If this news were to spread, I'm afraid our bronze roll this time will be famous in the sect." In front of the crowd, a young man dressed in a green and red satin robe stood tall and straight. His facial features were extremely distinct, and a few strands of long black hair fluttered in the wind. He had an extraordinary temperament. His eyebrows moved slightly as he whispered to a handsome young man beside him, "Du Xiaofu, are you going to make a move or should I?" Before the exit of the heavy rock space opens, the bronze ranking is still the bronze ranking. Nothing can be changed. The handsome young man stood there quietly. His facial features were as three-dimensional and handsome as if they were carved by a knife. His entire person exuded an elegant and untainted aura. He looked at the stone plaza in front of him and said softly, "Leave Du Xiaofu to me. Junior sister Muhan is also here." "All right, I'll leave Du Xiaofu to you." The man in the green and red satin robe said. "All right, it's been 2 hours. They should all be out." Suddenly, the handsome man's handsome face revealed a slightly unrestrained smile as he looked towards the stone forest in front of him. Chi-chi, there was silence in the stone forest, following which many footsteps could be heard. Everyone around the stone plaza raised their heads and looked over. They saw no less than 20 figures slowly walking over from the left. All of them had their heads lowered and their auras were extremely weak. It's by Fu Rong, Si Ruofeng and the rest. Around the stone plaza, there were people who immediately recognized the newcomers. Following which, they were stunned. They don't seem to be right. Why are all of them so weak and miserable? Could it be, seeing the auras and expressions of Si Ruofeng, by Fu Rong and the rest, everyone was stunned. Doubt flashed across their hearts as their gazes landed firmly on Si Ruofeng, by Fu Rong and the rest. Si Ruofeng and the rest walked slowly. Their footsteps appeared to be rather heavy. After a while, they arrived in front of the stone in the middle of the plaza. The handsome and elegant young man and the man in the green and red satin robe also looked at Si Ruofeng alone. Was it also done by Du Xiaofu? The man in the green and red satin robe felt Si Ruofeng's aura. It was clear that he was severely injured. Finally, some fluctuations appeared in his eyes. Du Xiaofu and junior sister Mu Han have teamed up. Si Ruofeng raised his head slightly. His weak gaze landed on the man in the green and red satin robe and the handsome young man. He said, "But I feel that Du Xiaofu and junior sister Mu Han have not used their full strength. They are both very strong." Hearing Si Ruofeng's words, the gazes around the stone trembled. Even Si Ruofeng had been defeated. That was the third on the bronze list, a human sovereign talent. If even he had been defeated, then Du Xiaofu was too terrifying. Suddenly, many people felt a little better in their hearts. Thinking about it, even Si Ruofeng, who had the talent of a human king, had been defeated by Du Xiaofu and had been robbed clean. It was natural that they had been robbed clean. Could it be that the newly promoted inner sect disciples this time are all so powerful? Many young men and women behind the man in the green and red satin robe frowned slightly at this moment. Their eyes were a little dazed. It's about time. They should be here soon. Next, let me see what's so special about Du Xiaofu. The handsome and elegant young man said softly. He stretched lazily and a smile appeared on his face. This caused ripples to appear in the eyes of several girls around him. Rumble. Just as the handsome young man's voice fell, many rumbling sounds came from the surrounding stone forest. It's here. It's finally the last 2 hours. The young man in the green and red satin robe said softly. The aura around him rippled slightly and waves of aura silently spread out in the air. On the square, many gazes immediately scattered in all directions. Under the gazes of the crowd, a moment later, in the surrounding stone forest, there were waves of people surging and figures flashing. A moment later, some figures appeared at the edge of the square. More and more figures appeared. Groups after groups appeared, but their auras were weak and they looked extremely miserable. The badges on their bodies were dim. Swoosh, swoosh, figures began to fly out from the stone forest. Groups of people directly appeared in the square. The leader of the group was a handsome young man in a black robe. His features were distinct, and his pure black eyes were as black as the endless abyss at the end of the universe. Behind the young man in a black robe, there was an outstanding young man with a slightly arrogant look in his eyes. Beside him, there were more than 20 extraordinary young men and women. The badges on their shoulders were still shining, proving that the energy copper talismans were still intact. In the past 7 days, they had managed to avoid being robbed by the people on the bronze list. Swoosh, swoosh. A moment later, another 30 people landed. The leader was a young man in a scholarly robe. He was tall and slender, and his eyes were clear. The badges on the shoulders of these 30 people were also shining. The energy copper talismans were also intact in the badges on their bodies. Swoosh, swoosh. Almost immediately after these 30 people, more than 20 extraordinary young men and women arrived. The leader was a burly young man who looked to be around 22 or 23 years old. He wore a light golden battle robe and had an imposing appearance. The badges on these 30 people were also shining. So far, they had managed to keep the energy copper talismans on their bodies. Swoosh, swoosh. In the air on the right, more than 10 figures flew over. The leader was a young man who looked to be around 23 or 24 years old. He wore a clear blue robe, and under his sword-like eyebrows, his long and narrow eyes were like gurgling spring water. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised. His figure landed and looked around. The young man in a black robe, the young man in a scholarly robe, the young man in a light golden battle robe, and the young man in a blue robe landed. They looked at the people on the bronze list in the middle of the square. Their expressions changed at the same time, as if they were facing a great enemy. After that, the 4 of them subconsciously huddled together, guarding against the people on the bronze board who would make a move. There were more and more people on the square. In a short period of time, there were more than 500 people gathered. When these young men and women appeared on the square, they gradually gathered together subconsciously. With the young man in a black robe, the young man in a scholarly robe, the young man in a light golden battle robe, and the young man in a blue robe as the leaders, the rest of the people gathered behind the 4 of them. Rumble. Suddenly, in front of them, there was a loud noise. The sound of rocks rolling could be heard from the rocky forest. Then, a large number of people came out. Looking from afar, there were at least a few hundred people. They gradually appeared in everyone's line of sight. It should be Du Xiaofu. The handsome and elegant young man glanced at the young man in a black robe, the young man in a blue robe, and the 4 others. Then he landed in front of them and said softly, "To be able to gather so many people, he's quite capable. It's really not bad. He's quite capable." The young man in a satin robe did not refute the handsome young man's words. He knew very well that those who were able to become inner sect disciples of the Manchu all had their own pride. They were all geniuses in the outside world. To gather these arrogant fellows together and lead them, there were not many people who could do it. Sometimes, this kind of ability could not be achieved purely by strength. A person's charisma and leadership would play a role in this. Chapter 644. Hundreds of figures arrived in a grandiose manner. They were all escorting the dozen or so extraordinary ones in front of them. In front of the dozen or so extraordinary ones, especially the man and woman at the front, they attracted the attention of everyone for no reason. The man wore a purple robe and looked resolute and sharp. The most eye-catching thing about him was that he always seemed to be carrying a broadsword wrapped in purple cloth on his shoulder. The woman's beauty was captivating. Her figure was graceful and she looked to be around 18 or 19 years old. She wore a long brocade dress with a white belt around her waist, outlining a graceful and alluring curve. When they heard the voices of the man and woman, the expressions of the newly promoted inner sect disciples and the disciples on the bronze ranking changed. Boss, the four fellows in front, including Su Chuyun, are the four human kings among the newly promoted inner sect disciples. Other than Su Chuyun, the one in black is called Feng Xiangyu. He seems to be from the 8th district. You were the one who took the champion of the 8th district. Otherwise, it would have been him. The one in the light golden battle robe is called Shu Yang and the one in scholarly robes is called Shi Yunxing. Hao Bian's voice sounded in Du Xiaofu's ears. Following Hao Bian's gaze, Du Xiaofu saw Su Chuyun in front of the hundreds of newly promoted inner sect disciples who had their bronze energy talismans stolen. Beside her were 3 other extraordinary ones who were also human king gifted talents. This made Du Xiaofu feel strange. It was said that there were 4 human king gifted talents among the newly promoted inner sect disciples. Originally, Du Xiaofu thought that Sima Muhan was one of them. He didn't expect that Sima Muhan wasn't one of the 4 human king gifted talents. Be careful. Do you see the 2 fellows in front? One is called Ji Aoming and the other is called Yin Mochen. They are ranked 2nd and 1st on the bronze ranking respectively. They are very strong. Sima Muhan walked towards the square slowly. Her bright eyes glowed with a faint purple light. She looked at the handsome young man who was standing quietly in front of her with a solemn expression. Walking onto the square, Du Xiaofu stood straight and followed Sima Muhan's gaze to the figures around the rock in the center of the square. Many of these figures were extremely familiar to Du Xiaofu. Finally, his gaze landed on the man in satin robes and the handsome and elegant young man at the front. So strong, Du Xiaofu's heart trembled when his gaze landed on the 2 youths. There was clearly no aura rippling from the 2 of them, but one would be affected by them just by looking at them. Such cultivation was extremely frightening. Are they Yin Mochen and Ji Aoming? Du Xiaofu couldn't help but take a few more glances at him. Then, his eyes turned and no one knew what he was thinking. However, when many gazes landed on Du Xiaofu, it was definitely extremely ugly. Thinking of that hateful and shameless brat, many people were cursing in their hearts. However, there was still lingering fear in their eyes and hearts. Sima Muhan walked out. Her steps were light, and her body was graceful. Although there was still a faint immaturity, she was already very attractive. Looking at the handsome and elegant youth on the rock, she pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was enough to topple a city. Senior brother Mo Chin, it's the last 2 hours. Can you pretend that you didn't see me? I don't want to fight with you. The handsome and elegant youth looked at Sima Muhan, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He said softly, Sima Muhan, Master has already told me, so I can't pretend that I didn't see you. However, since you've spoken, I will naturally listen to you. I won't fight with you. Thank you, Senior brother Mo Chin. I knew you were the best to me. Sima Muhan's face was full of smiles. He glanced sideways at Du Xiaofu and made a face, as if he was proudly demonstrating his power. I won't fight with you, but Ji Aoming will. I have someone else who wants to fight. Yin Mo Chen's indifferent voice fell. His voice was extremely calm, as though there were no ripples. However, hearing Yin Mo Chen's words, Sima Muhan's beautiful face immediately turned ugly. She fiercely glared at Imo-chin. "Ha, your senior brother Imo-chin is really good to you." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu also bent over with laughter. This action immediately attracted Sima Muhan's hateful gaze. Before Du Xiaofu's laughter fell, Imo-chin slightly raised his head. On his handsome face, he looked at Du Xiaofu. Sweeping his gaze across by Fu Rong, Feng Yutang, Su Qing and the others, he asked, "It was all done by you, right?" "I was tricked." Du Xiaofu spread his hands. At this moment, his expression was extremely helpless. If he did not know that the people on the bronze list wanted to deal with him, he would not have caused trouble for these people on the bronze list. "I understand you. To be honest, if I were you, I would strike first to gain the upper hand and strike second to suffer. I would definitely do the same." Imo-chin nodded and seemed to approve of Du Xiaofu's actions. He said, "However, there are some things that we have different standpoints. It is difficult to say who is right or wrong. Generally, it is just a matter of different standpoints. From your standpoint, it is natural for you to strike first and gain the upper hand." After pausing for a moment, Imo-chin continued to look at Du Xiaofu and said, "However, I also have my own perspective. As someone on the bronze list, I must protect everything on the bronze list. I will not make things difficult for others. I will represent the bronze list, and you will represent all the rookies. Let's fight. If I lose, the remaining energy copper talismans of everyone on the bronze list will be given to you. But if you lose, the energy copper talismans of all the rookies will be given to me. How about that?" Hearing Imo-chin's words, the surrounding people's expressions changed. No one on the bronze list reacted strangely. Instead, there was quite a bit of commotion among the inner sect disciples. Imo-chin is first on the bronze list. Du Xiaofu is no match for him. When the time comes, our energy copper talismans will also be lost. If Imo-chin attacks Du Xiaofu, won't we lose for sure? In the crowd, Su Chuyun's long and narrow eyes glanced sideways at Du Xiaofu. Then, she raised her head and said respectfully to Imo-chin, "Senior brother Du Xiaofu does not have the right to represent all of us. He is not qualified to represent us." After Imo-chin indifferently glanced at Su Chuyun, he said, "If even he isn't qualified, then you are even less qualified. Sometimes, a human king's talent is an aid, an opportunity, and a blessing to cultivators. But sometimes, it is also a disaster to cultivators. It is also a restriction. Don't think that just because you have a human king's talent, you are amazing. Wholeheartedly cultivating is the way of the king." Hearing Imo-chin's words, Su Chuyun's face immediately turned green and white. She was extremely embarrassed. But in front of Imo-chin, Su Chuyun did not dare to say anything. She only lowered her head slightly and looked at Du Xiaofu, who was not far away from her side. Her expression became even gloomier. "Martial Uncle Du, we support you." Behind Du Xiaofu, a series of cheers rang out. They were all cheers of support. "Okay, less idle chatter. Let's do it." Ji Aoming, who was wearing a satin shirt, slowly walked down the rock. She looked at Sima Muhan and said, "Junior sister Sima Muhan, I heard that you are not ordinary. Let's do it. Since you insist on doing it, then do it." Sima Muhan's expression was fearless after taking a deep breath. Her pale purple eyes even rippled with a smile as she slowly walked forward. The silk-like black hair on her back randomly scattered around her slender waist, adding a kind of youthful enchanting charm, causing quite a number of young men around the giant rock plaza to be captivated by her. "Junior sister Muhan, then I won't be polite. For the sake of the bronze board, I can only suppress you." As his voice fell, Ji Aoming's aura suddenly erupted, causing the surrounding space to suddenly tremble. It was as if the entire space was about to be overturned. Then, his figure was like lightning, directly crossing the plaza. His attacks were fierce and fierce. His every movement was filled with a terrifying aura. A powerful claw print directly grabbed Sima Muhan. Ji Aoming made his move. His aura shook the mountains and rivers. There was a strong force in his fierceness. Wherever the claw print passed, it seemed as if it wanted to tear the space apart. Sima Muhan's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Her delicate hands moved, and waves of talisman runes converged, transforming into a fist that directly collided with a claw print that had arrived in front of Sima Muhan in a flash. Boom! The two collided, bursting out a series of dazzling rune lights. It was like fireworks being released in the sky above the giant rock plaza. The energy and aura pressure spread out. Those with lower strength could only tremble. It's our turn now. You go first. No matter who wins or loses, I'll treat you to a drink. Machin want to make friends with you. As Machin's voice fell, a faint aura began to ripple out from his body. There was a powerful aura that had yet to erupt from his body, but that aura had already begun to rise within his body. As this aura spread out, those with lower strength in the surroundings already felt an inexplicable sense of oppression. Feeling the aura spreading out from Machin's body, Du Xiaofu's face turned slightly solemn. No wonder Sima Muhan said that this guy was extremely difficult to deal with. The faint aura fluctuation in his body blocked the spreading pressure within his body. Then, under the gazes of many people, Du Xiaofu's figure suddenly sat cross-legged on the ground of the plaza. His hand seals condensed and changed rapidly. Dear readers, Little Yu has updated 2 chapters today. He owes 1 chapter and will return it tomorrow. If he wants to adjust the time, he can't just update it at night. Brothers, please forgive him. He owes 1 chapter and will return it tomorrow. Chapter 645. One by one, handprints condensed, and the energy of heaven and earth spread out rapidly from all directions, madly gathering around Du Xiaofu. Talisman Array. Du Xiaofu is setting up a talisman array. Seeing the commotion caused by Du Xiaofu, someone instantly spoke. Machin looked at Du Xiaofu's hand seals forming a talisman array, but he didn't do anything. He still looked at it calmly and his handsome face didn't move. Boom! In just a few breaths, a total of 22 formation flags were formed in Du Xiaofu's hands. The surrounding space suddenly shook. Du Xiaofu's face instantly turned pale. Dazzling talisman inscriptions flashed in his eyes and an ancient aura spread out from his body. It was as if a divine light was spreading. Accompanied by the pressure, even Machin's expression changed slightly. A beginner 6-star talisman master who can set up a 6-star mystery-level talisman array. You are indeed extraordinary. Just based on this point, you are qualified to fight with me. Machin looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled faintly. He said elegantly, but if you think that a 6-star mystery-level talisman array can do anything to me, you will be disappointed. Is that so? We will only know after we try. Du Xiaofu's pale face had a slight smile on his lips. At the same time, he waved the 22 formation flags in his hands. What is he doing? Oh my God, what is he doing? Everyone's eyes were filled with confusion. Under everyone's shocked gazes, they saw that Du Xiaofu's talisman array wasn't attacking Machin. Instead, he set up the talisman array around himself. Rumble, the wind blew and the clouds surged. The talisman inscriptions shot into the sky and a terrifying talisman array was formed in an instant. It enveloped Du Xiaofu and disappeared. Is he trying to stall for time? Machin's eyes moved, and he seemed to be a little surprised. Then, a powerful aura suddenly burst out from his body, and a rune light directly enveloped his body. Then, his figure directly walked into the rune array. Everyone's eyes were immediately fixed on the talisman array, waiting for some shocking movement to come out. However, as Machin walked into the talisman array, there was no movement or sound other than the rippling aura that made people's mind. Rumble. However, in the intense battle between Sima Muhan and Ji Ming, the muffled sounds of energy kept resounding in the air. At this moment, no one's talisman Dao weapon was used. They were fighting Dao weapons. They were fighting. Ji was extremely powerful. Ji Ming was as he was the second in the heavens domain. Sima Muhan was Ji's Ji was Ji's. Jesus was this Ji was Ji? However, Sima Muhan was also like a fairy. Her beautiful figure was graceful as she dealt with Ji Ming's attacks. Although it seemed like she could only defend, she was still able to handle it with ease. The battle between the two was an eye-opener for the surrounding inner sect disciples. Everyone was surprised by Ji Oming's strength and also marveled at Sima Muhan's strength. Outside the giant rock space, it was dusk. The setting sun was as red as blood. The setting sun was round and radiated light in all directions. It was so dazzling that it was like a dream. On the mountain rocks, many old men and women were standing together. They were chatting and laughing as they waited for the opening of the giant rock space. I wonder if those rookies will be taught a lesson this time. They must be very miserable. When have those rookies not been taught a lesson? Being ruthlessly taught a lesson will be beneficial to their future cultivation. Being arrogant won't do them any good. Many elders and protectors were discussing the fate of those rookies in the giant rock space. To all the elders and protectors, it was a matter of course for rookies to be taught a lesson. Every year, the rookies in the giant rock space would be taught a lesson very miserably. Not far away, Elder Gu Qingyang was standing quietly. At this moment he seemed rather nervous. Behind Elder Gu Qingyang, Yu Wanli was wearing a plain robe. He stood quietly and didn't dare to speak at this moment. Wanli, do you think something will happen to your junior brother? Elder Gu Qingyang couldn't help but ask Yu Wanli in a low voice. Master, don't worry. Junior brother is extraordinary. He will definitely be fine. Yu Wanli nodded and said. At this moment he could only comfort his master. However, Yu Wanli was extremely worried. These few days he had heard from many elders that the few human monarchs on the bronze roll had already planned to teach his junior brother a lesson in the giant rock space. If his junior brother was taught a lesson in the giant rock space, perhaps he wouldn't even be able to enter the top 128 after he came out. At that time, his master would have to pay with all his fortune. At this moment, Yu Wanli didn't dare to imagine how miserable the outcome would be. Elder Qingyang, the giant rock space is about to open. How do you think that pair of disciples, Du Xiaofu, will be taught a lesson by now? Elder Kong Zhonglei moved closer to Elder Gu Qingyang with a spurious smile. 7 days. Even if Du Xiaofu could escape from Si Ruofeng and the others a few days ago, he would still end up the same in the giant rock space. You don't have to worry about my disciple. Although the few guys on the bronze roll aren't weak, I'm afraid they aren't enough to deal with my disciple. Gu Qingyang glanced at Elder Kong Zhonglei and snorted. We'll know in a while. If Du Xiaofu won't even be able to enter the top 128, I wonder how Elder Qingyang's preparations for the wager are going. Elder Hao Zongwei laughed heartily, as if he had already seen himself winning a few Dao artifacts. Rumble. At this moment, the valley in front of them began to tremble and spatial waves began to spread. In front of the valley, spatial ripples split apart. Then, a crack slowly appeared and spread out rapidly. All right, the giant rock space's exit has opened. They should come out now. Elder Hu Songquan's gray beard moved slightly. At this moment he was also very nervous. His expression was slightly focused and expectant. After all, he had also placed a bet. Swish, swish. At this moment, the gazes of all the protector elders fell on the spatial crack. The spatial crack spread and finally formed a spatial door, revealing a vast mountain range within. Many figures had already taken the lead and slowly walked out, as though they had traversed through space. Soon after, many figures appeared within the valley. One by one, the newly promoted inner sect disciples walked out. The badges on their shoulders were red and their auras were chaotic. Their expressions were miserable and it was obvious that they had all been taught a lesson. Sigh, the result is still the same. Looks like the newly promoted inner sect disciples this time are still being taught a lesson by the guys on the bronze roll. The guys on the bronze roll were also taught a lesson at this time last year. Many of them were taught quite a lesson. They will probably have to recuperate for a few months. Looking at the appearance of the newly promoted inner sect disciples, the elders and protectors who were waiting outside were not surprised. This result was too normal. They were taught quite a lesson. Elder Kong Zhonglei, Elder Hao Zongwei, Elder Qian Mingze, Elder Hu Songquan and the others who had placed bets on Elder Gu Qingyang were all smiling at this moment. They were looking for Du Xiaofu in the group of badly beaten inner sect disciples. If Du Xiaofu was taught a lesson, they would not even need to participate in the second round. They would have already won. However, when they searched, They unexpectedly did not find Du Xiaofu's figure. Elder Gu Qingyang and Yu Wanli's gazes were also tightly fixed on the group of people who had walked out. Their gazes were extremely nervous. Swish swish, many outstanding figures leaped out. Feng Xiangyu, Su Chuyun, Shi Yunxing and Xu Yang appeared in the valley. Behind them, there were a few figures with shining badges. These guys managed to keep the energy bronze talisman. They are not simple. There were elders and protectors who had praises in their eyes. As human kings, Feng Xiangyu and the other three were the talents that the Manchu focused on nurturing this time. Martial Uncle Du is mighty. Martial Uncle Du is great. After the 400 to 500 badly beaten newly promoted inner sect disciples and Feng Xiangyu and the others took the lead to walk out, cheers suddenly sounded from the spatial crack at the exit. The sound waves rolled out. Then the figures of young men and women leaped out excitedly. The figures leaped out and automatically gathered on both sides of the spatial crack. They waved their arms and cheered. In a short period of time, more than 300 people had gathered. The badges on the shoulders of these newly promoted inner sect disciples were shining, proving that the energy bronze talisman had not been stolen by the bronze leaderboard. Seeing these figures, the elders, protectors, and the others who had spoken out of the gate were gradually puzzled. More than 300 people's energy bronze talismans were still intact. Why were they so excited? This did not seem right. Swish swish, then, more than 10 figures leaped out from the spatial crack under many puzzled gazes. These 10 figures leaped out of the spatial crack and stood quietly. The one in the lead was a purple-robed young man. His eyes were resolute and determined. He carried a broadsword wrapped in purple cloth on his back. The badge at the end of the broadsword was shining. Beside the purple-robed young man was a charming woman. Her eyes were bright and her eyes were light purple. Her silky black hair fluttered around her slender waist. She was young and enchanting. It was enough to make a man lose his soul. Behind the two of them, there were 9 extraordinary young men and women. Everyone knew that these 9 people were the 9 talents among this batch of newly promoted inner sect disciples. At this moment, they were all clustered behind the purple-robed young man and the young enchanting woman. Chapter 646. The man and woman both wore the ancient Heaven Sect's badge on their shoulders. Their badges were shining brightly, proving that the copper energy talismans in their badges were still intact. These 2 people were Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. That kid seems to be fine. At this moment, almost all the elders and protectors were looking at Du Xiaofu. Looking at Du Xiaofu's smug expression at this time, his expression was indifferent. Other than his face being a little pale, there was nothing wrong with him. He seems to be fine. At this time, Elder Gu Qingyang's gaze also fell on Du Xiaofu from afar. His expression was solemn and worried. When he saw that his beloved disciple didn't seem to be in trouble, he immediately relaxed a lot. Martial Uncle Du is mighty. Good job, Martial Uncle Du. The surrounding hundreds of inner sect disciples raised their arms and shouted. They seemed to be shocked by something and were extremely excited. This caused the elders and protectors to be extremely puzzled. Du Xiaofu looked around and waved his hand slightly. The surrounding shouts immediately quieted down and hundreds of people responded to his call. This scene caused the elders and protectors to be even more puzzled. Something that could cause hundreds of new inner sect disciples to respond to his call was definitely not a simple matter. Raising his head slightly, Du Xiaofu saw his master Gu Qingyang in front of him. His pale face instantly revealed a slight smile. Swoosh swoosh, the profound qi under his feet surged. After a few flashes, Du Xiaofu arrived in front of Elder Gu Qingyang. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Master, Third Senior. Greetings, Elders." "Xiaofu, did the fellow on the copper board make things difficult for you?" Elder Gu Qingyang asked tentatively. He looked at the smile on his disciple's face. His disciple's calm appearance made it seem as if nothing major had happened in the giant rock space. Moreover, the energy copper talisman was still inside his badge. "I am fine. The people on the copper board did not make things difficult for me." Du Xiaofu replied to Elder Gu Qingyang. "Du Xiaofu, did Si Ruofeng and the rest not make a move on you?" Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Elder Hao Zhongwei immediately asked Du Xiaofu with a puzzled expression. Si Ruofeng and the rest had already announced that they would deal with Du Xiaofu, who had offended the bronze board. It was impossible that they would not attack Du Xiaofu. Si Ruofeng. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and replied to Elder Hao Zhongwei, Elder, Si Ruofeng did make a move. However, he became much more obedient after I beat him up. As soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, the surrounding elders and protectors were stunned. They all looked at Du Xiaofu in astonishment and their gazes were filled with doubt. Kid, are you saying that Si Ruofeng was defeated by you? Elder Kong Zhonglei looked at Du Xiaofu and seemed to be somewhat doubtful. Who was Si Ruofeng? He was ranked 3rd on the copper board and had the talent of a human king. It was definitely impossible for a new inner sect disciple to defeat him. Elder, I did not defeat him alone. I teamed up with little niece Sima Muhan. Du Xiaofu said softly. Taking advantage of the fact that Sima Muhan was not beside him, he continued to take advantage of the situation. Elder Hu Songquan could not help but ask Du Xiaofu, did Yin Mochen and Ji Aoming not make a move against you? Following Elder Hu Songquan's question, the surrounding elders and protectors also stared curiously at Du Xiaofu. Even if Si Ruofeng had been defeated by them, Yin Mochen and Ji Aoming, the 2 terror overlords, would not let the matter rest. At this moment, not only were the numerous elders and protectors puzzled, even Elder Gu Qingyang and Yu Wanli were extremely puzzled. Yin Mochen and Ji Aoming are not weak, but they were unable to do anything to me and little niece Sima Muhan within 2 hours. Therefore we are fine. Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Kid, are you saying that Yin Mochen was unable to do anything to you within 2 hours? Elder Chang Mingzi stared at Du Xiaofu and asked. You can say that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here unscathed. Du Xiaofu nodded without any trace of politeness. Be careful, the wind will cut your tongue. The people on the bronze roll will be coming out soon. Then, we will know whether it's true or not. Elder Hao Zhongwei clearly did not believe that Yin Mochen would be unable to do anything to Du Xiaofu within 2 hours. This was absolutely impossible. One had to know that even if Yin Mochen's strength was on the gold roll, he would be able to enter the top 10 terror overlords. If he still could not do anything to Du Xiaofu within 2 hours, then this Du Xiaofu would have to be a monster. Du Xiaofu's words clearly made Elder Gu Qingyang somewhat suspicious. Elder Gu Qingyang naturally knew Yin Mochen's strength very well. Whoosh whoosh, just as Elder Hao Zhongwei's words fell, nearly 100 figures leaped out from the boulder space's exit. There were a total of 99 extraordinary young men and women. The ones at the front were Yin Mochen, Ji Aoming, Si Ruofeng, Bai Fu Rong, Feng Yutang, Su Qin, and other outstanding talents. When these 99 people came out, the elders and protectors looked as though they had seen a ghost and were stunned. Under the gazes of the elders and protectors, the 99 disciples on the bronze roll, other than Yin Mochen, Ji Aoming, and more than 20 others, the remaining 70-some people were extremely defeated and looked miserable. Their badges were dim, their breathing was chaotic, and their expressions were dispirited. At a glance, it was clear that they had been ruthlessly ravaged. Let's go. Yin Mochen looked around. After bowing to the elders and protectors in the distance, he spoke to the people behind him and left. Sigh. All the people on the bronze roll had ugly expressions at this moment. Quite a few sighed helplessly and did not want to stay here any longer. They immediately left with Yin Mochen. Bai Fu Rong and the others had their profound qi sealed by Du Xiaofu and could only be helped by others to leave. What's going on? What exactly happened inside? Elder Hao Zhongwei and the others were stunned. It's nothing major. They were just beaten up. They should be able to recover in a few months. Du Xiaofu said softly. The gazes of the elders and protectors fell on Du Xiaofu. Their gazes were filled with complicated emotions. Du Xiaofu, 782 copper energy talismans, ranked first. Judge Hao, 603 copper energy talismans, ranked second. Sima Muhan, 308 copper energy talismans, ranked seventh. An elder's voice came from the valley. The shock in his voice could not be concealed, causing the other 500 or so new inner sect disciples to feel envious and jealous. Why is it still first? If I had known, I would have hidden a bit more. Du Xiaofu felt helpless. The bird that sticks out gets shot. He did not want to be first. Du Xiaofu casually took out some copper energy talismans. He had not expected to end up in first place. If he had known this would happen, he would have taken out less. At any rate, no one knew just how many copper energy talismans he had plundered this time. To Du Xiaofu, it was best to keep a low profile when stealing things. He did not expect that he would still be first. Haha, Hao Zhongwei Kong Zhonglei, do you see? Yin Machen, Ji Ming, and Si Ruofeng are not weak. It's just that they can't do anything to my disciple. Ha! Elder Gu Qingyang laughed proudly. The worries he had for the past few days had been swept away. However, Hao Zhongwei, Kong Zhonglei, and the other elders and protectors had ugly expressions on their faces. Could it be that I placed the wrong bet? Hu Songkuan, Elder Qian Mingzei, and the others began to worry. Si Ruofeng and the others had not been able to stop Du Xiaofu. It seemed that they had already lost half of their bet. At night, the moon hung high in the sky, illuminating the mountains. The entire ancient heaven sect was in an uproar. The news of Du Xiaofu and the other new inner sect disciples trampling on the bronze ranking experts in the giant rock space and robbing them of everything spread out. Everyone who heard it was shocked. Du Xiaofu's name and even Martial Uncle Du's name spread throughout the ancient heaven sect overnight. This is a violation of the sect rules and disrupting the giant rock space. How can this be? How dare that Du Xiaofu gather the new inner sect disciples and gang up on a bronze ranking disciple? He must be severely punished. He even dared to snatch the energy copper talismans of a disciple on the bronze ranking. How audacious! He must be severely punished. When the news spread, many of the elders expressed their dissatisfaction and clamored for Du Xiaofu to be punished severely. Of course, these fierce elders were mostly related to the disciples who had been taught a lesson on the bronze board. Who dares to touch my disciple? I'm not done with him. Try me if you don't believe me. At this time, Elder Gu Qinyang also spoke out and was determined to protect his disciple. But at this time, the ancient heaven sect master did not express his attitude. Many of the Manchu experts could only guess the sect master's thoughts. At night, the moonlight poured down. The huge mountain peak was extremely peaceful at this time. How did that kid make it through the last 2 hours? In the side hall, Sima Taxing asked Protector Hao beside him. That brat set up an extremely special talisman array. According to the third elder, that talisman array should be an extremely rare ancient illusion array. That brat's talisman array was set up around him, causing Yin Machen to have no choice but to break into the talisman array. The result should be that brat's trap and trapped him inside for a full 2 hours. After Yin Machen broke that brat's talisman array, the exit to the giant rock space also opened. Protector Hao's expression was also extremely helpless and moved as he said, Mu Han and Ji Ming have been fighting for a long time. Within 2 hours, Ji Ming did not have the slightest advantage. After fighting for a full 2 hours, the exit finally opened and he could only give up. It seems that the little fellows on the bronze ranking have all suffered quite a bit this time. Sima Taxing smiled and said, that's good as well. This is also a good thing for those little fellows on the bronze ranking. Chapter 647. Sect Leader. There are quite a number of elders in the sect who seem to have some opinions about everything that happened in the giant rock space this time around. I'm afraid that they are all waiting for your opinion. Protector Hao said to Sima Taxing. Those elders who have opinions should be related to the little guys on the bronze list. Sima Taxing knew what was going on. He looked at Protector Hao and said, Protector Hao, inform those elders who have opinions and that little guy Du Xiaofu to come to my place tomorrow morning. Does Sect Master want to punish Du Xiaofu? Protector Hao was puzzled. I just want to see that little guy. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Sima Taxing said. At night, in a courtyard alone, there was a defensive seal formation. In the misty space, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged. His body was enveloped in a faint white light. An ancient aura spread out. After an unknown period of time, when Du Xiaofu's complexion was rosy and his breathing was stable and strong, he withdrew his hand seals. The white halo of divine light around him slowly withdrew into his body. Then, he opened his eyes that had been tightly closed. Huff, while his eyes were shining, he spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Then, his eyes slowly became clear. Your recovery isn't slow. I didn't expect that the cultivation method of the golden-winged great rocks would have such a miraculous effect after being cultivated by humans. Zhen Qingchuan's illusory figure also appeared in this misty space. At this moment, Zhen Qingchun had been staying in the ancient desolate space. The comparison of time in this space allowed Zhen Qingchun to recover faster. Brother Qingchun, how long will it take for you to fully recover? Du Xiaofu stood up and felt the energy in his body recover. A smile appeared on his face. It will take some time for me to fully recover. Now, I'm much better than before. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu and said softly, the ancient heaven sect is indeed worthy of being one of the 9 great powers of the Central Plains. Today, that Yin Machin actually broke your illusory formation in 2 hours. He's not weak at all. Thinking of the illusory matrix, Zhen Qingchun was also quite moved. Du Xiaofu had practiced the enchanting matrix a few days ago. In just a few days in this space, Du Xiaofu had mastered it completely. Moreover, the effect was far better than what he had expected. According to Zhen Qingchuan's estimation, even an ordinary peak martial king realm cultivator would not be able to break out of the illusion formation in a short period of time. However, the young man called Yin Machin was able to break the formation in 2 hours. That was enough to prove that he was extraordinary. Without great willpower, it was almost impossible to break through the illusion. This also proved that Yin Machin was extraordinary. Speaking of Yin Machin, Du Xiaofu was also quite moved. The ancient heaven sect did not have an undeserved reputation. The extraordinary and powerful young disciples of the ancient heaven sect proved how powerful the ancient heaven sect was. Brother Qingchun, your enchanting matrix is extraordinary. I'll continue to comprehend it some other day. It should be of great use in the future. Du Xiaofu was quite interested in the enchanting matrix that he had learned a few days ago. If it were not for the enchanting matrix, he was afraid that he would not be able to stop Yin Machin even if he did not go all out. There are more than one enchanting matrix. However, even among talisman masters, only a few people can comprehend and practice it. Cultivating and comprehending the enchanting matrix requires the support of an extremely strong spiritual force. In the process of cultivating and comprehending, it is very easy to go mad. Once you are trapped in your own enchanting matrix, no one can break out of it. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu with a faint shock in his eyes. When this guy had first cultivated the enchanting matrix, it had been like an unparalleled realm. With a little guidance from Zhen Qingchun, Du Xiaofu had progressed like a flying sword. He had successfully comprehended it in just a few days. When Zhen Qingchun had first cultivated it, it had taken him a whole month. His comprehension was already absolutely terrifying. However, he did not expect this guy to be even faster. After a slight pause, Zhen Qingchun continued to say to Du Xiaofu, comprehend the enchanting matrix well. It will naturally have an unexpected effect on you in the future. If you can cultivate it to a high level, it will be enough to enchant people for eternity. Du Xiaofu nodded. His eyes moved secretly. With a smile on his face, he asked Zhen Qingchun, Big Brother Qingchun, do you have any other methods that are suitable for me to cultivate? This was Du Xiaofu's true goal. Every time his big brother Zhen Qingchun gave him something good, it was not an ordinary item. Given Du Xiaofu's style, how could he not take the opportunity to dig out more things? After going in such a big circle, this is your goal, right? Zhen Qingchun saw through Du Xiaofu. After being with Du Xiaofu for so long, he was definitely the person who understood Du Xiaofu the most. How could Zhen Qingchun not know Du Xiaofu's goal? After rolling his eyes at Du Xiaofu, he said, when you comprehend the enchanting matrix to a level that I am satisfied with, I can consider teaching you another method. That method has a lot to do with the enchanting matrix. You must also comprehend the enchanting matrix to a certain level before you can comprehend and cultivate the method I want to teach you. Thank you, Big Brother Qingchun. Du Xiaofu immediately smiled with satisfaction. The things his big brother Zhen Qingchun had were not ordinary things. When you can cultivate that method, you will have another great method in the future. It will be very useful. If you had that method in the giant rock space, you wouldn't have needed to set up the enchanting matrix to stall the human king Yin Mochen, Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. Human king Yin Mochen. Du Xiaofu murmured softly. He raised his head slightly and asked Zhen Qingchun, Big brother Qingchun, actually, I don't know what a human king is. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu in confusion and said, It's strange. I remember that your martial veins were only between grade 2 and grade 3. Now, it seems to have reached grade 3 martial veins. Your martial veins have improved a lot. Du Xiaofu didn't pay much attention to the improvement of his martial veins. He guessed that this improvement might have something to do with the mysterious technique he was comprehending becoming stronger and stronger. He raised his head and asked Zhen Qingchun, Could it be that the talent of a human king is related to martial veins? Of course it's related. It's related to martial veins. Zhen Qingchun explained to Du Xiaofu in detail. Martial veins are divided into grade 1 and grade 9 martial veins. You should know that the higher the grade of martial veins, the greater the achievement on the path of martial cultivation. This has been the unchanging rule of the world for countless years. It's also an unchanging fact. After a slight pause, Zhen Qingchun continued, In this world, there will always be geniuses. Some people have martial veins that exceed grade 9 and become the most outstanding people among people. Their future is limitless. With martial veins that exceed grade 9, they can suppress other people in terms of martial veins. They are outstanding people among people, heroes among people. Their future is limitless. Those who exceed grade 9 martial veins and are heroes among people are called outstanding people. Du Xiaofu seemed to understand something. How many people in this world could surpass grade 9 martial veins? They were indeed heroes among people. In this world, there are some people who are blessed from birth. Maybe some people didn't know that they were blessed from the beginning. They will slowly unseal themselves in the future. These people are even more blessed than the outstanding people. Zhen Qingchun said, These people were born with a special kind of martial vein. By relying on this special martial vein, they will also obtain a special kind of power. This special power either comes from heaven and earth or comes from the bloodline. It will be very close to them. With this special power brought by the special martial vein, their cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. Their future is also limitless. This kind of martial vein is called king martial vein. These people are also called kings among people, natural talents of human kings. Back then, Lu Kuan had the immortal martial vein and Yin Mochen had the storm martial vein. Are these all king martial veins? Du Xiaofu was really envious. He only had a grade 3 martial vein. If he hadn't comprehended the mysterious move, he would probably still have a trash martial vein. However, some people were born with king martial veins. The real immortal martial vein is not as simple as the king martial vein. Lu Kuan's martial vein is not as simple as that. That's why he only has the natural talents of human kings. The storm martial vein is naturally a king martial vein. Zhen Qingchun said, These special martial veins may be inherited from the bloodline, or they may be born. There are many reasons for their formation. It may be related to water, fire, wind, or mountains and lakes. It comes from everything in heaven and earth. In the future, you will slowly understand that there is no lack of geniuses in this world. However, if you want to become a real expert, it is not enough to rely on true talent. Your own efforts are the most important. Du Xiaofu nodded seriously. Talent was one of the reasons. If you want to become an expert, you naturally can't rely on talent alone. Actually, the martial veins in your body should be much stronger than those at the king martial vein level. Even those at the king martial vein level cannot create martial vein spiritual seals. It is a pity that your martial vein, Zhen Qingchun sighed slightly. Martial vein spiritual seals were definitely not something that could be created by ordinary martial veins. Even those at the king martial vein level could not do it. However, Du Xiaofu's situation was also very strong. He could only sigh casually. Du Xiaofu's eyes flashed with a faint coldness. He said softly, No matter who did all this, we will know in the future. The next morning, the sun shone on the earth. The morning breeze was cool, and the blue sky was clear. The scenery in the ancient heaven sect was picturesque. "Greetings, master. How are you?" Du Xiaofu bowed in front of the mountain's courtyard. He was surprised that Elder Gu Qingyang had come so early in the morning. Chapter 648. The sect master wants to see you. I'll bring you to the Manchu's main hall. You don't have to be afraid of anything there. Master will be there. Elder Gu Qingyang patted his chest as he spoke. His white hair and beard fluttered in the wind. It was a huge mountain surrounded by towering peaks. The mountain peak was surrounded by clouds and mist. The mountain range in the distance was majestic and boundless. The surroundings were lush and green. Within the mountain stream, there was a gurgling stream. It was full of vitality. At the peak of the mountain, there was a majestic main hall. It was bathed in the morning light. It was like a huge, ferocious beast standing on the mountain peak. When Du Xiaofu arrived at the main hall after looking around, he saw that there were many figures sitting in the main hall. Invisible auras fluctuated from the figures, causing the space in the main hall to freeze. That aura made people want to crawl on the ground. Du Xiaofu looked over and saw many familiar figures. Elder Kong Zhonglei, Hu Sangkun, Elder Chang Mingze and the others were among them. There were also many old men. Their auras were extremely powerful. There were even some whose auras were stronger than Elder Sun and the others. With Du Xiaofu's arrival, all eyes in the main hall fell on Du Xiaofu. Some were curious, some were confused, and some were complicated. "Xiaofu, the person in the middle is our ancient heaven sect master. Hurry up and greet him." After Elder Gu Qingyang finished speaking to Du Xiaofu, he walked up to the main hall and sat down on the chair in the middle. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked at the middle-aged man sitting at the head of the main hall. His body was thin, but he was extremely sturdy. The middle-aged man wore a green robe with green embroidery. His long black hair was neatly combed into a bun. A few strands of hair fell down from his ears. There was a hint of elegance in his dignified appearance. He was similar to Sima Muhan. He must have been a handsome man when he was young. Beside the middle-aged man, Du Xiaofu also saw a familiar woman standing beside the middle-aged man. Her figure was slender, and she wore a pair of embroidered shoes with soft fox fur sewn on them. On her jade-like wrists, she wore 2 bracelets that shone with white light. It was Sima Muhan. Du Xiaofu greets Senior Brother Sect Master and all the elders present. Du Xiaofu bowed to the middle-aged man sitting at the head of the main hall. Du Xiaofu couldn't even sense a trace of the man's aura. To be able to sit at the head of the main hall, Du Xiaofu didn't even need to guess to know that the middle-aged man was the current ancient heaven sect master, Sima Taking. However, as soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, the gazes of the people in the main hall suddenly fluctuated. Senior Brother Sect Master, this title definitely had a special meaning in the Central Continent. With this identity, he could do whatever he wanted in the Central Continent. "Boy, how dare you! Although Elder Gu Qingyang intends to accept you as a disciple, you can't be disrespectful in front of the sect master. The Manchu hasn't officially acknowledged you as Elder Gu Qingyang's disciple." An old man in his 70s, who was dressed in gray and white and had long black hair combed into a bun, immediately reprimanded Du Xiaofu. He didn't want Du Xiaofu to really become the sect master's junior brother. If that happened, it would be difficult to punish him. As soon as the old man called Yuan Buxiu finished speaking, Elder Gu Qingyang immediately shouted, "Yuan Buxiu, what do you mean? Isn't it just because your disciple Si Ruofeng was taught a lesson? With your status, why do you have to embarrass a junior?" "All right, elders, don't lose your poise in front of a junior." Sima Taxing was helpless. He knew the temper of his martial uncle, Elder Gu Qing. If he quarreled with Elder Yuan Buxiu, it would be troublesome. As soon as Sima Taxing's voice fell, Elder Yuan Buxiu, who originally wanted to say something, could only hold back in the end. "Du Xiaofu, I heard that this time in the giant rock space, you gathered a lot of inner sect disciples, besieged and seriously injured a bronze list disciple, and snatched his energy copper talisman. Is this true?" Sima Taking Xing sized up Du Xiaofu. His expression remained unchanged, but a deep, glass-like light flashed in his eyes. Senior brother sect master, this is completely groundless. The rumor is wrong. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said to Sima Taxing, if senior brother sect master doesn't believe it, Sima Muhan knows best. Senior brother sect master can ask her. Du Xiaofu, seeing that Du Xiaofu had actually kicked the ball directly to her, Sima Muhan immediately glared at Du Xiaofu fiercely. That guy really did not have good intentions. Du Xiaofu, you're just quibbling. Then tell me, how did the injuries on the bronze list disciples come about? An elder with an ugly expression could not help but ask. His disciple, Su Qing, had been beaten up miserably. Elder, the injuries of the people on the bronze board should be due to their lack of cultivation, so they were injured by others. Du Xiaofu turned to the side and replied to the elder who spoke, his attitude neither servile nor overbearing. What a joke! The bronze list disciples' cultivation is insufficient in front of you. If you hadn't gathered hundreds of new inner sect disciples to besiege them, how could the bronze list disciples be inferior to you? The elder who had just spoken retorted. All the elders present knew that the new disciples would not be able to contend against the bronze list disciples. Du Xiaofu was still rather indifferent as he replied, Elder, if you don't believe me, you can find the people on the bronze list to fight with me on the Sky Marshal Plaza. Then, we'll know whether it's true or not. That elder seemed like he wanted to say something, but he was unable to speak. Actually, he had also heard about how terrifying Du Xiaofu was last night. Even Yin Machin had not been able to do anything to that young brat in 2 hours. If he asked the other people on the bronze list to fight with that brat, they would definitely not have an advantage. He Chuan, what do you think? If you're not convinced, then let your disciple, Su Qing, come to the Sky Marshal Plaza. Elder Gu Qingyang chuckled. The elder called He Chuan by Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Elder Gu Qingyang and did not dare to say anything. He then continued to look at Du Xiaofu and said, then it's a fact that you snatched the bronze energy talisman from the bronze list disciples, right? Of course it's a fact. Du Xiaofu did not deny it and said, but as far as I know, the Manchu does not have any rules that say that new disciples cannot snatch the bronze energy talismans from the bronze list disciples. They can only be snatched by those on the bronze list. After pausing for a moment, Du Xiaofu glanced at the elders present. He was still neither servile nor overbearing as he said with a calm expression, if only the bronze list disciples can snatch and humiliate the new inner sect disciples in the giant rock space, and the new inner sect disciples cannot fight back, then why bother training in the giant rock space? You might as well just give the bronze energy talismans to the bronze list disciples from the start. Is this what the elders want? Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, some of the elders present changed their expressions. Some had complicated gazes, and some wanted to say something. But no matter how many times they opened their mouths, they did not say anything in the end. That makes sense. I wonder if any of the elders have anything else to say? Sima Taxing smiled and looked at the elders in the hall. He said, the giant rock space can train the new inner sect disciples as well as the bronze list disciples. This is the true purpose of the ancestors of the Manchu when they built the giant rock space. In the future, the new inner sect disciples and the bronze list disciples should train each other. As soon as he finished speaking, Sima Taxing looked at Du Xiaofu and said, Du Xiaofu, you broke the rules in the giant rock space as well. It's wrong to rob all the energy copper talismans of the disciples on the bronze rankings, so you should be punished. Senior brother master, the rules. Du Xiaofu immediately lost his temper after hearing this. But before he could finish, Sima Taxing interrupted Du Xiaofu and said, little guy, listen to me first. Since you don't know the rules and the rules didn't clearly state it, you can't be blamed for this matter. However, you must bear the responsibility. Sima Taxing smiled and said, how about this? In 6 days, all 128 of you will compete in the next round on the Tianwu Square. If you can take first place at that time, this matter will be treated as if it never happened. At the same time, the Manchu will reward you with a high-grade Dao tool. But if you can't take first place, then all the bronze energy talismans you plundered in the giant rock space as well as the bronze energy talismans plundered by the new inner sect disciples will have to be taken out. At the same time, you will lose all the rewards of the Manchu. Junior brother, this is not fair. Elder Gu Qingyang immediately protested. If he took first place, he knew that Sima Muhan was a monster. It was absolutely not an easy thing to defeat Sima Muhan. Martial Uncle Qingyang, this matter is settled. If Du Xiaofu doesn't even have this little ability, then he doesn't deserve to be your disciple. What do you say? Sima Taxing smiled at Elder Gu Qingyang and said, Martial Uncle, don't you have confidence in your disciple? Elder Gu Qingyang clenched his teeth and nodded. Who says I don't have confidence in my disciple? If he takes first place, then so be it. After Elder Gu Qingyang finished speaking, he deliberately gave Du Xiaofu a look of support. It seems that master can't be provoked. Du Xiaofu bitterly smiled. His master had sold him out with just a provocation. Well, Du Xiaofu Muhan, you two go down first. I still have something to discuss with the elders. Sima Taxing said to Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan beside him. Chapter 649. Yes, father. Sima Muhan nodded and glared at Du Xiaofu before leaving the hall. Du Xiaofu bowed and left with Sima Muhan. Why do you have to drag me into this? That's too unkind. Outside the grand hall, at the peak of the mountain, clouds and mist lingered. Sima Muha slightly raised her beautiful face, and within her lively eyes, her light purple eyes stared hatefully at Du Xiaofu. You also got your share of the energy copper talisman. You can't possibly make me the scapegoat. Furthermore, you are the daughter of the sect leader. He won't do anything to you. Du Xiaofu said with a smile on his face. In your dreams? Sima Muhan's light purple eyes rippled with an intelligent and charming luster. She stared at Du Xiaofu and pouted slightly. Her cherry lips were smeared with a light pink like honey, as if she was inviting people to kiss her. Her red lips slightly parted as she said, 6 days later, I will definitely not let you go. At that time, I will properly deal with you. After she finished speaking, her beautiful figure left and her black hair fluttered behind her. After a few flashes, she disappeared from the peak of the mountain. Du Xiaofu smiled and also left. When Du Xiaofu returned to Tianmu Peak, he unexpectedly met an uninvited guest. It was a lady wearing leather armor. Under the leather armor, an extremely alluring figure was outlined. Her long and straight legs were completely exposed and her face was very moving. She could be called a beauty. Why are you here? Du Xiaofu was very surprised. The person who came was Qiao Yingmeng. I just bought some things from the outer sect and met someone called Gu Zhangyu. He paid a price and asked me to find you. He said that he knows you and wants to meet you. Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu. Gu Zhangyu. Du Xiaofu recalled that the thin youth who had brought him to Tianmu Peak from the outer sect was called Gu Zhangyu. His brows moved slightly as he asked Qiao Yingmeng, where is he now? He's waiting for you outside the inner sect. It seems like his injuries aren't light. He's been waiting for you the entire night. Qiao Yingmeng said. Within the ancient heaven sect, there was an outer sect area and an inner sect area. Outer sect disciples were not allowed to enter the inner sect area as they wished. Once they set foot in the inner sect area, they would be severely punished. When Du Xiaofu exited the inner sect, he immediately saw Gu Zhangyu, who was waiting for him at the exit. Gu Zhangyu was not tall to begin with, and his complexion was sallow and emaciated. At this moment his complexion was pale, and his breathing was chaotic. It was obvious that his injuries were not light, but his eyes were still clear. Greetings, Uncle Master Du. Seeing Du Xiaofu arrive, Gu Zhangyu immediately bowed respectfully. In just one night, Uncle Master Du's name had spread throughout the ancient heaven sect. Naturally, Gu Zhangyu had also heard of him. What happened to you? Your injuries aren't light. Du Xiaofu sized up Gu Zhangyu. Gu Zhangyu's injuries were not light. Reporting to Uncle Master Du, it's nothing serious. Gu Zhangyu looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled bitterly. He said somewhat embarrassedly, Uncle Master Du, can you lend me some spirit herbs? I want to refine a few healing pills, but I don't have any on me right now. The people in the Manchu who know me don't dare to lend me any. So, I thought I could only borrow some from Uncle Master Du. I can lend you some spirit herbs, but you have to tell me what happened first. Du Xiaofu felt that something wasn't right. It could be said that he was fated to meet this guy. Last time, this guy led the way for him, so he owed him a favor. So, it was necessary for him to understand. If he could help him a little, it could be considered as returning the favor. Is there even a need to guess? He must have offended someone. That's why he's in such a miserable state. Qiao Yingmeng said. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had come because of an outer sect disciple, she was curious. She followed Du Xiaofu back, wanting to watch the show. Gu Zhangyu hesitated for a moment, then looked at Du Xiaofu and Qiao Yingmeng and said, "It's the people from the Crouching Tiger Society." Crouching Tiger Society. Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly twitched. He faintly felt that this matter had something to do with him. Back then, he had dealt with Zheng Mingzhou and the others from the Crouching Tiger Society. Perhaps this matter had implicated Gu Zhangyu. He asked, "Could it be that this matter has something to do with me?" Gu Zhangyu helplessly nodded his head and said to Du Xiaofu, "After Martial Uncle Du dealt with the people from the Crouching Tiger Society, they didn't dare to find trouble with me. However, a few days ago, someone said that Yin Machun, Si Ruofeng, Ji Aoming, and the other senior brothers on the bronze rankings would ruthlessly deal with Martial Uncle Du in the giant rock space." After pausing for a moment, Gu Zhangyu continued, "So, the people from the Crouching Tiger Society also came to find me. They said that I no longer had a backer, so they robbed me of everything I had and even heavily injured me. They also warned everyone I knew that if anyone dared to interact with me, they would end up like me. I can only blame myself for being useless." As his voice fell, Gu Zhangyu's expression turned gloomy. Although he was a spirit talisman master, his major was medicine talisman master, and his minor was weapon talisman master. However, his talent wasn't high, and he didn't even have much success in the field of alchemy. Now that he was a 5-star mysterious realm cultivator, he often made mistakes when refining pills that had just reached the spirit grade. He didn't have any status in the Manchu, and no one even dared to ask him to refine pills. No one could withstand the loss of spirit herbs after a failed pill refinement. If it wasn't for his identity as a spirit talisman master, he probably wouldn't even have been able to become an outer sect disciple of the ancient heaven sect. Du Xiaofu's expression gradually turned gloomy. He didn't expect this matter to really be caused by him. "Take this pill." Du Xiaofu handed a healing elixir to Gu Zhangyu and said, "Where is the Crouching Tiger Society? Can you bring me there to take a look?" Gu Zhangyu hesitated for a moment, then took the pill from Du Xiaofu's hand and stuffed it into his mouth. He said to Du Xiaofu, "Martial Uncle Du, are you going to stand up for me? If so, there's no need for that. Thank you for your good intentions." Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and asked Gu Zhang, "Why? Could it be that you're going to endure being bullied by them?" Qiao Yingmeng glanced at Du Xiaofu and interrupted, "Do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? Can you really protect this brat forever? In the Manchu, there are countless factions, big and small, and all of them are related to the inner sect disciples. Even if you protect this brat today and help him vent his anger, what about in the future? I'm afraid those people will only get worse. Then let's make them not dare to do anything in the future." Du Xiaofu said solemnly, "It's easy for you to say. This is the Manchu. What can you do? If this matter gets out of hand, it won't be good for anyone." Qiao Yingmeng said, "Senior Sister Qiao is right. Thank you for your good intentions." Gu Zhangyu bitterly smiled at Du Xiaofu. Qiao Yingmeng heard Gu Zhangyu's words and felt that something was wrong. She immediately recovered and said to Gu Zhang, "Brat, I'm speaking up for you. Why are you scolding me? You call me senior sister, but you call him martial uncle. What is the meaning of this?" "Senior Sister Qiao, Gu Zhangyu didn't think too much about the complicated relationship. He didn't dare to offend either of them. All right, I can't be bothered to bicker with you." Qiao Yingmeng ignored Gu Zhangyu and said to Du Xiaofu, "If you want to protect this brat, there is a way. You can form a faction. With your influence in the giant rock space, I'm afraid many inner sect disciples will be willing to join you. When the time comes, you'll become a powerful force. It won't be difficult to protect this brat." Hearing this, Gu Zhangyu looked at Du Xiaofu expectantly. "Forming a faction? I'm afraid I don't have that much time." Du Xiaofu pondered for a moment. Right now, he only wanted to focus on cultivation and become an expert as soon as possible. He probably didn't have that much time to do things like forming a faction. I don't need much time. Do you think those fellows on the gold ranking, silver ranking, and bronze ranking have the time to care about those things? It's just a name. Strength is the most important. Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu, if you can have a powerful force, the profits won't be small. There are many outer sect disciples, and the profits from selling pills, spiritual weapons, and talisman weapons are shocking. Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. He seemed to be a little interested. He had also heard that there were more than 100,000 outer sect disciples in the ancient heaven sect. More than 100,000 people were all cultivators. The consumption of pills, spiritual weapons, talisman weapons, Dao weapons, cultivation materials, and so on was definitely a huge number. If he could get involved, the profits would indeed be shocking. Although it was said that cultivators should cultivate wholeheartedly, without cultivation resources, it would be impossible to cultivate wholeheartedly. In the ancient heaven sect, there are more than 100,000 outer sect disciples. Those who can become outer sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect are mostly from powerful families. In terms of cultivation resources, they definitely won't be too shabby. The cultivation resources provided by the Manchu are far from enough. This makes the secret trade of cultivation resources even more popular, and the profits are shocking. Qiao Yingmeng paused for a moment and said to Du Xiaofu, do you know where the most profitable trading company is in the ancient heaven sect's territory? Du Xiaofu shook his head. He really didn't know. It's in our ancient heaven sect. Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu, as far as I know, the most profitable trading company in the entire ancient heaven sect is in our ancient heaven sect. The people behind it are the fellows on the gold ranking. The profits are that great? Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was a little surprised. When I saw the reviews, I suddenly realized that Little You still owed a chapter 2 days ago. But yesterday, he only updated normally and didn't pay back that chapter. I'm ashamed. I'll pay back this chapter immediately. Little You, go back to writing. Please forgive me. Chapter 650. Of course the profits are huge. This is the ancient heaven sect. Only the ancient heaven sect knows how to refine many special pills. They are all rare and priceless items in the outside world. The Manchu also has some normal martial techniques. As long as they aren't high-level martial techniques, the Manchu will turn a blind eye to them. These are all priceless treasures in the outside world. Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu, many of the top businesses in the outside world will take goods from our ancient heaven sect. The ones who sell the goods are the factions of the Manchu. Among them, the factions controlled by the few terrifying masters on the gold ranking are the main ones. The Manchu also doesn't care about this? Du Xiaofu was surprised. How could the Manchu be at ease handing over such huge profits to their disciples? Could it be that the ancient heaven sect was so big that they didn't care? The Manchu will naturally care. The shops set up by the Manchu's disciples need to pay a certain amount of benefits to the Manchu every month. If the shops sell pills, spiritual weapons, martial techniques, spiritual medicines, etc., they also need to be handed over to the Manchu's special department. After the sale is approved, the Manchu will take 50% of the profits, Qiao Yingmeng said. So ruthless? Du Xiaofu was shocked. He thought the Manchu didn't care. He didn't expect the Manchu to be the most ruthless. They didn't do anything, but they took 50% of the profits. This was the most ruthless. Of course. Are you interested in making some noise now? You're also a talisman master, so it'll be more convenient, Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered. He was indeed a little interested. With such huge profits, even if the ancient heaven sect took 50%, it would still be shocking. Why are you so eager to let me make some noise? Don't tell me you don't have a motive? Du Xiaofu asked Qiao Yingmeng. Actually, I do have some selfish motives, Qiao Yingmeng smiled. Qiao Yingmeng smiled. She lost some of her wildness and gained some charm. She then looked at Du Xiaofu and said, let me put it this way. My family runs a trading company. Do you understand? You want me to make some noise and then help your family? Du Xiaofu asked. Just helping each other. My family's business. My family's business. My family's business is not small. My family's business. Many things are in ancient heaven sect. My family's business in the outside world. My family's business. My family's business is. Xiao Yingming looked at Du Xiaofu and said, if you can make some noise, then I can have the family's trading company ask for goods from you. The profits in between are not small. As for how far you can go in the future, that will depend on you. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered. He seemed to be thinking about something. He then looked at Xiao Yingming. Why me? Looking at Du Xiaofu, Xiao Yingming smiled. Because you dared to touch the bronze board. You dared to touch Si Ruofeng. Your potential is limitless. I believe in my eyes. Just because your words are so meaningful and honest, I'll agree to it. Du Xiaofu shamelessly smiled and said to Xiao Yingming, but I also have a condition. If I do something, you have to be the first to support me. Are you afraid that I'll get involved with my family? Xiao Yingming smiled. Just don't lose everything, Du Xiaofu said generously. Xiao Yingming looked at Du Xiaofu with a complicated expression. After a while, she nodded. Okay, I agree. Martial Uncle Du, Senior Sister Xiao, can you count me in? Hearing the conversation between Du Xiaofu and Xiao Yingming, Gu Zhangyu didn't dare to interrupt. Only now did he have the chance to say that he wanted to participate. Okay, you can join. You can be considered an elder in the future. Du Xiaofu nodded with a smile. What name do you plan to use to make some noise? I'm afraid that just the three of us won't be enough. We need to recruit more people. The inner sect disciples can only make a name for themselves. The real ones are the outer sect disciples. Xiao Yingming said to Du Xiaofu, let's use the name World Society. Du Xiaofu hesitated for a moment before saying, as for the noise, let's make some noise today. It'll also be good to tell others that there will be a world society in the ancient heaven sect in the future. Dusk. The sun was setting in the west. At this moment, the outer sect was in an uproar. Du Xiaofu had directly defeated over 100 outer sect disciples of the Crouching Tiger Society at noon. He had smashed the trading company controlled by the Crouching Tiger Society into a mess. At the same time, a world society had also been established in the ancient heaven sect, which immediately caused a lot of discussion. In addition to what Du Xiaofu had done in the giant rock space and the news of his battle with Yin Mochen, Du Xiaofu's name was definitely the most talked about in the ancient heaven sect. Just as the outer sect was in an uproar, Du Xiaofu had already returned to his little nest in the inner sect. He entered the ancient desolate space and continued to comprehend the mysterious move as well as the various beast energies in the ancient desolate space. Especially after reaching the Martial Lord realm, Du Xiaofu needed time to comprehend some of the beast energies of the golden winged rock. Time passed slowly, and Du Xiaofu entered the ancient desolate space. Naturally, he didn't know that the outside world was in an uproar because of him. The Crouching Tiger Society's defeat had implicated many people, but in the end, the matter could only be settled carelessly. At this time, there were naturally not many people who dared to provoke Du Xiaofu. However, the newly established World Society was unusually popular. It was rumored that no less than 100 inner sect disciples had joined on the second day. The most shocking thing was that among the newly promoted inner sect disciples, there were a total of 9 talents who had joined the World Society. Other than Xiao Yingming, there were also Hao Bian, Benyu, Mo Wen Mujiajia, and the others. With the 9 talents joining at the same time, the newly established World Society was immediately in the limelight. It even attracted the attention of many of the Manchues elders. Of course, the World Society had been in the limelight recently, but there was another matter that was even more eye-catching. That was a few days later, among the newly promoted inner sect disciples, the 128 people who had come out of the giant rock space would compete with each other. It was said that this time, many of the Manchues powers had opened many bets as usual, betting on who would take first place. And this time, other than the 4 human kings, the most popular one was undoubtedly Sima Muhan, followed by Du Xiaofu. Among the newly promoted disciples, Those who had the qualifications to enter the 128 could not be seen these days. They were all making their final preparations. Several days passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, the date had arrived. In front of a quiet courtyard on a mountain peak, Sima Muhan stood quietly. Her light purple eyes reflected a moving luster under the sunset. Little Muhan, tomorrow is the day of the competition. How are your preparations? Sima taking Xing appeared in front of the courtyard, a smile on his handsome face. Father, Sima Muhan looked back and smiled. She walked lightly to Sima taking Xing's side and said, Actually, there's no need to prepare anything. There shouldn't be any problems. Although Su Chuyun, Feng Xiangyu, and the others aren't weak, they aren't much of a threat. Du Xiaofu, how are you paying attention to him in the giant rock space? Don't tell me you also think he's not a threat to you? Sima taking Xing laughed. This, Sima Muhan's eyebrows slightly moved, her eyes rippling as she said, That guy is indeed unfathomable. He has a lot of methods and is extremely fierce, like a fierce beast. Chapter 651. It seems like you have a high opinion of him. Sima Taxing knew his precious daughter very well. It was not easy for her to have a high opinion of someone. I'm too lazy to comment on him. That guy is not only shameless and cruel, but also extremely despicable. Thinking of everything about that guy, Sima Muhan could only use these few words to describe him. Hearing this, Sima Taxing laughed and said to his beloved daughter, That guy is extremely cunning, but he's not just smart. Perhaps he can achieve great things in the future. If there's someone in your batch who can achieve great things in the future, I'm afraid it's most likely him. Father, you have a high opinion of that guy too? Sima Muhan looked at her father curiously. It was rare for her to see her father praise someone, especially so deeply. He's just a young guy, but he's neither servile nor overbearing in front of me and so many elders. He can even talk eloquently. In the giant rock space, he was able to drag you down with him. The newly established world society has 9 talents joining it. These things seem ordinary, but they're actually not. Sima Taxing's deep eyes flashed like glass. He said, This guy is definitely not simple. As for how much he's hiding, we'll know tomorrow. Seeing her father praising that guy, Sima Muhan couldn't help but pout. She said, I'd like to see how capable that cruel and shameless guy is. Pivif, in the misty space, Du Xiaofu suddenly sneezed twice. He rubbed his nose and muttered, Who's scolding me? How's your comprehension? Zhen Qingchuan's illusory body floated in front of Du Xiaofu and asked, Not bad, but there's not enough time. I'll have to go into seclusion some other day. Du Xiaofu clenched his fists, feeling the progress he had made, and a smile appeared on his face. This time, Du Xiaofu spent about 2 months in the ancient desolate space. In addition to the mysterious move, the methods in the ancient desolate space, and some of the methods of the golden-winged great rocks, Du Xiaofu had also spent some time comprehending the pulse spirit. He had made significant progress. You have already reached the peak of the martial lord realm. You should spend more time comprehending the pulse spirit. Otherwise, breaking through to the martial king realm will be extremely difficult. The degree of comprehension of the pulse spirit is directly related to your breakthrough to the martial king realm. Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu nodded. After packing up, he left the ancient desolate space. After leaving the desolate ancient space, Du Xiaofu went to see his 3rd senior apprentice brother, Yu Wanli. He told him that his master, Gu Qingyang, had told him to prepare well for the competition tomorrow. Junior apprentice brother, you must win. No matter what, even if you can't get 1st place, you must at least get 2nd place. Before Yu Wanli left, he reminded Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu was naturally looking forward to tomorrow's competition. Not to mention that the sect leader had already said that if he didn't get 1st place, he would be in trouble. Night shrouded the mountains. In the quiet courtyard, a blue-clothed youth stood there. His long and narrow eyes flickered with a cold light as he said, Humph! Do you really think that you can take the lead tomorrow? Tomorrow, everyone will know that I, Su Chuyun, am the true sovereign personage. Tomorrow is when the true victor will be decided. Du Xiaofu, you won't be complacent for long. The next morning, in the ancient heaven sect, the morning clouds rose, and thousands of mountains woke up. The Tianwu Square was already crowded early in the morning. Outer sect disciples could also participate in today's competition. This was a grand occasion for the ancient heaven sect, so naturally, all of the hundreds of thousands of outer sect disciples would participate. No one wanted to miss out on such an exciting competition. Therefore, when the sun rose, the vast Tianwu Square was already crowded with people. All of them were extraordinary young men and women. I wonder who will get first place this time. It should be one of the 4 human kings, young Miss Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. In the end, the top 16 winners will get a chance to enter the ancient heaven sect's secret area to forge. The champion will even get a high-grade Dao tool. But this time, there's an outstanding genius for human kings and young Miss Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. That's a total of 17 people. Looks like even the outstanding human kings will have to stop outside. It said that Du Xiaofu was able to resist Yin Mochen for 2 hours in the giant rock space. There's a great chance for him to get first place this time. I heard that Du Xiaofu was able to resist senior brother Yin Mochen for 2 hours by using a symbol array. As for young Miss Sima Muhan, she relied on her own strength to resist senior brother Sima Muhan for 2 hours. In my opinion, perhaps young Miss Sima Muhan is better. Look, there are quite a few disciples from the previous competition. Not only that. Don't you see the people on the mountain peak in front? Those are experts on the silver ranking. They just don't want to stand with us. They're all here to watch the show. The surrounding crowd discussed animatedly. It was extremely lively. The crowd was also divided into many areas. Within the ancient heaven sect, there were many large and small forces. Naturally, they all stood together. Look, the elders are here. There are also those 128 fellows. I wonder who will be able to enter the top 16. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. In the distant sky, a large number of figures flew over. Many extremely powerful demonic beast mounts flew across the sky, carrying extraordinary elders to a corner of the square. At this moment, there was a high platform that had already been prepared. The few elders at the front were Gu Qingyang, Kong Zhonglei, Hao Zhongwei, Hu Sangkun, Yan Mingze, and the others. Whoosh whoosh, following behind the elders were 128 outstanding figures. They all slowly landed in the center of the Sky Marshal Square. Du Xiaofu was among them. Standing beside him were Qiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, Ben Yu, and the others. 128 people landed in the square. They slightly raised their heads and looked at the surrounding crowd. Their fighting spirit quietly rose in their hearts. Everyone knew that the competition was about to begin. If they wanted to stand out, they would have to give it their all. Greetings, elders and protectors. Around the Sky Marshal Square, a dozen outer and inner sect disciples respectfully bowed. Dispense with the formalities. Elder Gu Qingyang waved his long sleeves and sat on a large chair. One by one, the elders took their seats and looked around. For some reason, these elders felt a little uneasy in their hearts today. Especially Yan Mingze, Hao Zhongwei, Kong Zhonglei, and the other elders. Their faces were always a little uneasy. It was as if everyone was worried about something at this moment. Du Xiaofu also stood among the 128 people. He looked around and saw Su Chuyun and the others. He felt a little strange in his heart. Su Chuyun and the others had a total of 9 energy copper talismans on them. Logically speaking, it wouldn't be easy to rank in the end. Everyone had 9 energy copper talismans. Not to mention that this time, at least 300 people had a lot of energy copper talismans on them. Even if Su Chuyun and the others kept their energy copper talismans, they wouldn't be able to rank in the top 128. Du Xiaofu whispered his doubts to Judge Hao, who was beside him, and asked, "Fatty, can their energy copper talismans be auctioned in the top 128? In the past, the new inner sect disciples were also able to rob the new inner sect disciples in the giant rock space. However, under normal circumstances, they would only take action in the last 2 hours of the giant rock space. I reckon that they had already sensed the danger and had already taken action against the other disciples in the giant rock space. Judge Hao glanced at Su Chuyun and the others and said to Du Xiaofu in a serious tone, "I see." Du Xiaofu nodded his head slightly. Just as he finished speaking, he heard an elder's voice from a corner of the high platform, accompanied by profound energy. "All right, it's about time now. You should all know the rules. The 128 people will fight among themselves first. In the end, 16 people will win. After that, the 16 of you will fight for first place. If you have any questions, you can raise them now." Elder Chang Mingzi said in a loud voice from the high platform. His voice was so loud that it could be clearly heard by the entire Tianwu Plaza. No one had any questions. Even Du Xiaofu had just followed his master, Gu Qingyang, and third senior brother to the Tianwu Plaza and learned the rules of the competition. The rules of the competition were very simple. It was fine as long as one did not intentionally harm the lives of others. However, if someone was not tactful and insisted on persistently pestering others, they could only bear the consequences themselves. Therefore, in this kind of situation, once someone felt that they were in trouble, no one would dare to forcefully resist. Otherwise, if something happened in the end, they could only blame themselves for asking for it. Since no one has any questions, I will now announce that the competition will begin. The 16 people who are still standing in the end will win. Elder Chang Mingzi's voice spread out and resounded in the large plaza. Boom! As Elder Chang Mingzi's voice rang out, the surrounding plaza immediately erupted in cheers. The sound waves shook the heavens and the scene was extremely hot-blooded. In the center of the plaza, the 128 people immediately focused their attention and their expressions froze. Profound energy had already begun to spread out from some of their bodies as they summoned their weapons. Their gazes were vigilant and sharp as they looked at the people around them. The surrounding crowd of spectators was extremely surging for the 128 people. They were all from the younger generation. It was impossible for anyone to be completely calm in such a competition, including Du Xiaofu. Far away in the dark forest, Du Xiaofu had once thought about how far he would be able to go when he competed with the experts of the same generation in the Central Plains. And now, such an opportunity was right in front of him. Today's update is complete. Chapter 652. In the middle of the square, the 128 people's eyes were burning with fighting spirit. The elders and protectors on the stage were also whispering to each other. The surrounding spectators' eyes were also burning with passion. The annual event had already begun. Whoever could enter the top 16 would have the lead and it would depend on their own strength. In the crowd, Du Xiaofu, Hao Guan, Xiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen, Mu Jiajia, and Benio looked at each other and nodded with smiles. President, out of the 11 talents this time, 9 of them have joined our World Club. We have to make sure that our people can enter the top 16. Xiao Yingming's voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears. While you've been doing nothing these few days, our world society already has 170 inner sect disciples and over 300 outer sect disciples. Our power isn't weak at all. Du Xiaofu was surprised when he heard that. Then a smile appeared on his face. Although there were only 300 outer sect disciples, there were 170 inner sect disciples. These were the inner sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect. If placed outside, any one of them would be as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Boom! At the same time, there were already people who couldn't help but make a move. Many disciples' profound qi surged and runes soared into the sky. Bursts of fiery clashes immediately erupted. Noise filled the sky. Profound qi clashed and talisman weapons moved. Low energy sounds rang out. In the middle of the square, a great battle was about to break out. Figures flickered and the sound of metal clashing was accompanied by broken runes. It was like fireworks. In such a chaotic battle, everyone went all out from the start. No one dared to go all out. Otherwise, they would be eliminated. Figures clashed one after another. However, not many people dared to provoke the talented people in the square. However, that didn't mean that no one dared to provoke them. Some inner sect disciples teamed up. They seemed to have been prepared. They also pounced towards Mo Wen, Hao Guan, Benyu, and the other talented people. Rumble, Hao Guan, Mo Wen, Benyu, and the others all made their moves. Each of their tyrannical auras erupted as they launched their attacks. Profound chi whistled unceasingly as runes soared into the sky like a blazing sun. Xiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, and the others made their moves. Their graceful figures drew a tempting arc in the air as they ruthlessly swept towards their opponents. As geniuses, Judge Hao, Xiao Yingmeng, and Mo Wen's attacks were not something normal disciples could touch. Wherever they went, they would easily defeat normal inner sect disciples. Attack! Feng Xiangyu, Su Chuyun, Shu Yang, and Shi Yunsheng also began to attack. Their auras erupted, and their attacks were earth-shattering. Such a chaotic battle in the plaza caused the surrounding outer sect disciples to be unable to take their eyes off it. Many excited shouts also sounded out from the plaza, with many of them shouting themselves hoarse, their voices echoing endlessly in the air above the plaza. However, in this absolute battle, no one saw anyone attacking Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. Among the 128 people, the only ones that did not make a move were the two of them. The battle in the surroundings caused the wind and clouds to surge as energy swept across the plaza. Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu stood in the middle of the plaza. No one dared to make a move against the two of them. This also caused the surrounding spectators and the elders and protectors on the high platform to whisper among themselves. Not long after, some of the 128 people began to retreat from the stage with heavy injuries. They did not dare to be entangled with the battle. Bang, 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 low muffled sounds were like thunder as more and more people left the plaza. The number of people remaining in the plaza was getting lesser and lesser. From the looks of it, only geniuses and talented people can enter the top 16. In the end, the others will not be able to contend against them. On the high platform, an elder nodded with a smile. Many of the elders and protectors already had an idea of the number of people in the top 16. Time slowly passed. When there were only 17 people left in the battle of the 128 people, the entire plaza suddenly became silent for no reason. The last dozen or so people, without a doubt, were left with 11 outstanding talents, plus Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. Only the last 16 of the 17 people would be able to enter a secret place to cultivate. Someone must be eliminated. The 17 people in the plaza looked at each other, their gazes becoming extremely complicated. Someone must be eliminated. Su Chuyun moved. As her voice faded, the surrounding space trembled. A palm print with a fierce aura directly slammed towards Mu Jiejia, who was not far away. She was actually going to directly attack Mu Jiejia. Facing Su Chuyun's instant attack, Mu Jiejia's expression changed. Her graceful body rapidly retreated, drawing an arc in the air. At the same time, a soul-shaking energy wave swept out. Her delicate hand wrapped in talisman mysterious runes, resisting the former. All of this happened extremely quickly. The instant the two of them exchanged blows caused the surrounding gazes to change color. Bang! Under a low muffled sound, the two collided. Energy swept out and Mu Jiejia's delicate body was directly pushed back. A spiritual talisman master would only be at a disadvantage when fighting against a martial artist. Mu Jiejia spat out a mouthful of blood. Her delicate face had a grave expression. She knew that she was not Su Chuyun's opponent in a direct confrontation. Whoosh! With the sound of wind breaking, a delicate and graceful figure appeared in front of Mu Jiejia. It was Xiao Yingmeng, holding two strange scimitars in her hands. Junior sister Yingmeng, are you going to join forces with Mu Jiejia? Su Chuyun looked at Xiao Yingmeng with an extremely complicated gaze. What was complicated was hatred and pain. Not just her, but all of us. Judge Hao shouted. Behind him, Running Bull, Mo Wen, and the other 6 heroes all came to Xiao Yingmeng's side. They had all joined the World Society. At this time, they naturally had to join forces. Although Su Chuyun was a human king talent, the 9 of them were definitely not afraid of Su Chuyun alone. What do you mean? Facing Judge Hao and the other 7 heroes, Su Chuyun's expression was definitely not good. You want to touch my world society's people? What do you think we mean? Running Bull was not afraid at this time. With a smile in his eyes, his chi fluctuated, ready to attack at any time. Anyway, there was nothing to be afraid of since it was 9 against 1. How is it? Are you all right? A faint voice came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. Unknowingly, Du Xiaofu had already arrived in front of the injured Mu Jiejie. It's nothing serious, just a small injury. Mu Jiejie nodded and said, That's good. Du Xiaofu smiled and turned around under everyone's gaze. His clear eyes fell on Su Chuyun, then he turned to Qiao Yingming, Judge Hao, and the others and said, Leave it to me. Qiao Yingming, Judge Hao, and the others nodded and directly retreated. Du Xiaofu, what do you mean? Su Chuyun looked at Du Xiaofu with a sneer on her face. Her gaze was obviously extremely unsightly. Perhaps Su Chuyun did not expect that she would provoke the other 8 heroes just for Mu Jiejie. Even Du Xiaofu was provoked. Nothing, I just want to beat you up. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. In the giant rock space, he was already somewhat displeased with Su Chuyun. Now that Mu Jiejie had joined the World Society, Su Chuyun would definitely protect Mu Jiejie. Since one of them would be eliminated, he naturally would not let Su Chuyun go. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Su Chuyun paused for a moment. There was no anger in her long and narrow eyes. Instead, she revealed a sneer and shook her head slightly. She sneered and said, Du Xiaofu, you can only rely on a few talisman arrays. Do you really think you can do anything to me? I, the human king, am not someone you can do anything to. Since you jumped out, then I'll deal with you first today. Looking at Su Chuyun in front of him, Du Xiaofu's clear eyes slightly moved. There was a faint trace of disgust in them, and a trace of coldness fluctuated in his eyes without leaving a trace. Then, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He slightly raised his head and said, I'll let you attack first. Otherwise, I'll have to set up a talisman array. Hearing Du Xiaofu's mocking words, Su Chuyun's face also surged with coldness. Her gaze was gloomy as she stared at Du Xiaofu. She was indeed worried that Du Xiaofu would set up a talisman array first. All right, I'll fulfill your wish. Let's see what you have to fight me other than talisman arrays. As Su Chuyun's voice fell, a majestic aura accompanied by dazzling talisman symbols erupted from her body like a volcano. Boom! In an instant, the square rumbled as a mighty aura swept across the square. Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. Su Chuyun's true cultivation is Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. It turns out that Su Chuyun has already reached the Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. As the mighty aura surged out from Su Chuyun's body, it immediately caused the surrounding spectators, as well as the elders and protectors on the high platform, to be astonished. I didn't expect this guy to have been hiding his strength all this time. Feng Xiangyu, Qiao Yingmeng, Shi Yunxing, Xu Yang, Hao Bian and the others were extremely surprised when they felt the aura from Su Chuyun's body. Ha, Du Xiaofu, I've already stepped into the Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. Do you think you can do anything to me? Su Chuyun's Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm aura swept across the square. The wind and clouds surged in the sky above the square. The vast aura caused the spectators to tremble. The aura was extremely frightening. Today's update has arrived. Looking for fresh flowers, looking for recommendations. Chapter 653. I didn't expect this fellow to have reached the Martial King Realm. His improvement is not bad. On the high platform, Elder Hu Sangkuan was shocked. He couldn't help but exclaim. Boom! A low and deep muffled sound resounded in the space around Su Chuyun. At the same time, a palm print wrapped in dazzling talisman markings swept towards Du Xiaofu with a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In front of the palm print, a shockwave whizzed out and swept in all directions. In a short moment, under the shocked gazes of many people, the terrifying palm print rushed towards Du Xiaofu. The terrifying energy swept down, causing Du Xiaofu's purple robe to flutter. Du Xiaofu moved. Just as the palm print appeared before him, his right arm shook like a cattail leaf fan, causing layer upon layer of golden talisman markings to erupt. They were like the wings of a golden rock, and a domineering and fierce aura gushed out like a volcano. In the end, it whistled as it swept out and slapped out. Voila! The shockwave swept out and the runes were dazzling. A terrifying force swept out in all directions, causing Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jia, Judge Hao and the others who were slightly closer to them to take a step back. Deng deng! Amidst the berserk strength, Du Xiaofu staggered a step back, while Su Chuyun's body directly staggered a dozen steps back. When he stabilized his body with the last step, he let out a muffled groan, and a wisp of dark red blood directly spat out from the corner of his mouth. Pucci, when the blood flowed out, everyone was shocked. Su Chuyun's gloomy face suddenly became extremely ugly. Du Xiaofu is so strong. At this moment, everyone was stunned. Many elders and protectors on the high platform were stunned. Most of the elders and protectors had only heard of Du Xiaofu's strength. Even when he defeated Yi Xian, who was at the Martial King realm, in one move, it was said that it was because the spiritual talisman master's attack affected Yi Xian's mind and soul. That was why he could take the opportunity to injure Yi Xian. And now, under the gazes of everyone present, everyone could clearly see that Du Xiaofu had casually dealt with Su Chuyun's attack, injuring her with a raise of his hand. Just how fierce and overbearing was the terrifying aura that had erupted from his body earlier. Overestimating yourself and looking for a beating? Judge Hao glanced at Su Chuyun, who was pushed back. In the giant rock space, he was the clearest about Du Xiaofu's strength. Even if Su Chuyun's Martial King realm strength was the Martial King realm, Judge Hao was not worried. Back in the giant rock space, Feng Yutong, Bai Furong, Su Qing, and the others were all weak. None of them was weaker than Su Chuyun now. If Su Chuyun had seen how Du Xiaofu dealt with Feng Yutong, Bai Furong, Su Qing, and the others with his own eyes, he would not dare to be so arrogant now. Su Chuyun wiped the traces of blood from the corner of his mouth. His sneering gaze gradually darkened, as if he had just fallen from heaven to hell. At this moment, the densely packed gazes from all around landed on him, making him feel as if they were mocking and ridiculing him. He was a human king realm genius and had always been at the peak of his generation in the Ancient Sky sect. But now, facing a kid who had suddenly joined the Ancient Sky sect, he was repeatedly defeated. Whether it was strength or junior sister Qiaoying, continue. Su Chuyun gritted his teeth and shouted coldly. Mysterious talisman patterns began to flicker around his body, and the energy of heaven and earth was activated. In a short time, a terrifying phantom of a meridian spirit demon beast appeared in the sky amidst a mighty aura. Roar! The meridian spirit demon beast roared. This was a huge demon leopard with a greenish-white body. It had 4 wings that were connected to each other. The 4 wings were covered in feathers and dazzling runes. With a flap of its wings, a fierce wind whistled in the sky like a hurricane. When such a terrifying phantom of a meridian spirit demon beast appeared, the pressure caused the hearts of countless onlookers to tremble. 4-winged storm leopard, a demon beast on the heavenly beast ranking. This is Su Chuyun's meridian spirit. I didn't expect Su Chuyun to actually use his meridian spirit. This is a desperate move. Seeing Su Chuyun use his meridian spirit, the surrounding people whispered in shock. There were not many inner sect disciples in the Ancient Sky sect who could possess the meridian spirit of a demon beast on the heavenly beast ranking. How terrifying were those demon beasts on the heavenly beast ranking? It was really too difficult to obtain their blood essence. Go! Su Chuyun coldly shouted as she activated her meridian spirit. The huge meridian spirit 4-winged storm leopard immediately flapped its wings. Accompanied by a terrifying energy hurricane, it directly pounced towards Du Xiaofu. That energy hurricane was not an ordinary hurricane. Within the energy hurricane, those who were not strong enough would be instantly suppressed into a bloody mist if they were caught in it. Du Xiaofu hasn't activated his meridian spirit yet. Can he contend against it? That Du Xiaofu wouldn't even put Su Chuyun's meridian spirit in his eyes, right? Everyone was shocked. Facing Su Chuyun's meridian spirit 4-winged storm leopard, Du Xiaofu did not have any intention of activating his own meridian spirit. Roar! The 4-winged storm leopard roared. Its rolling pressure filled the sky as it directly suppressed Du Xiaofu. It would be great if it's a real four-winged storm leopard. Du Xiaofu was a little disappointed. It had been a long time since he drank the blood essence of a demonic beast on the heavenly beast list. At the same time, Du Xiaofu made his move. A dazzling golden light burst out from his body like a sun. His clear eyes were filled with golden runes. As the hand's seal condensed, Du Xiaofu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. Stomping his foot, he leaped into the air and directly pounced towards the terrifying four-winged storm leopard. His right arm shook and his 5 fingers slightly bent. On his fingertips, mysterious runes flickered as if they wanted to tear the space apart. Energy ripples visible to the naked eye spread out from the claw. Great rock chaos shattering claw. A low shout came from Du Xiaofu's mouth. At this moment, the aura on Du Xiaofu's body was like that of a peerless, ferocious beast. A claw stretched out from his hand and golden light burst out. The dazzling, mysterious runes were like golden lightning that wreaked havoc. It was as if a golden-winged rock was about to spread its wings and soar into the 9 heavens. The eruption of such a domineering and terrifying aura immediately attracted many surprised gazes. Such a domineering and ferocious aura should not appear in humans. It could only exist in the bodies of demonic beast sovereigns. Under such a claw, the densely packed figures in the surroundings all felt their meridians and souls tremble. Their meridians and souls felt uncomfortable and fearful for no reason. It was as if they were facing a king. Chi. Under the terrifying claw, the oppressive aura descended. A trace of fear flashed across the phantom of the four-winged storm leopard. Then, golden light burst out from the latter's claw. Like countless golden lightning snakes, it ruthlessly landed on the phantom of the four-winged storm leopard in an incomparably domineering manner. The Great Rock's chaos-crushing claw was a domineering technique of the golden-winged rock clan. It was something that Du Xiaofu had comprehended and cultivated during his seclusion in the ancient desolate space a few days ago. The Great Rock's chaos-crushing claw was undoubtedly stronger than the sky-shaking wings. It was rumored that in ancient times, when the golden-winged rock flapped its wings and descended, its sharp claws could capture and tear apart dragons. From this, one could see how powerful and terrifying the Great Rock's claws were. Chi, the terrifying claw fell. Facing the enormous phantom of the four-winged storm leopard, after a short stalemate, it directly tore the phantom of the four-winged storm leopard to shreds with an unstoppable force. Like a hot knife through butter, everything was routed. The runes that filled the sky were shattered. A terrifying energy storm spread out in an arc in the air. Chi, as his meridians and souls shattered, Su Chuyun spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned deathly pale. His gloomy eyes suddenly became lifeless at this moment. With his meridians and souls shattered, his pride was also shattered. Chapter 654. Su Chuyun never thought that his pulse spirit would be so weak in front of Du Xiaofu. Gu, the densely packed spectators around the Tianwu Square were stunned. After a short moment of silence, the sound of people sucking in cold air could be heard one after another. Su Chuyun's pulse spirit couldn't even withstand a single blow. How could people not be shocked? On the square, Sima Muhan's pale golden eyes looked at the purple-robed young man in front of her. There was a slight fluctuation in her eyes. Impossible, this is definitely impossible. How can I lose? I definitely won't lose. I definitely won't lose. Su Chuyun muttered to himself. On his deathly pale face, his long and narrow eyes began to be suffused with venomous veins. Both of his eyes stared intently at Du Xiaofu. A trace of fresh blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, causing his originally handsome face to appear even more sinister at this moment. Chi la la, a terrifying aura once again spread out from Su Chuyun's body. On the surface of his body, mysterious talisman inscriptions started to flicker. It looked extremely strange. Is Su Chuyun going to use his martial pulse? Looking at the commotion caused by Su Chuyun, the gazes of the many elders and protectors on the high platform changed at this time. All the elders and protectors present were well aware of how powerful Su Chuyun's martial vein was. Fusion martial pulse, petrification. As Su Chuyun shouted in a low and deep voice, the light on her body shone brightly. The mysterious runes on the talisman condensed and changed before covering the surface of her body, causing her body to swell as if it was filled with air. In a short period of time, under many surprised gazes, Su Chuyun's body expanded to a size of a few hundred feet. He was like a giant standing in the air. His body swelled and layers of rocks covered him, turning him into a huge stone man. Then, the huge body landed on the ground and stood in the square like a stone statue. Boom! The huge body stood in the square, causing the hard square covered by the talisman formation to tremble. It was as if the square was going to crack. Su Chuyun has activated his petrification martial pulse. Can Du Xiaofu still fight against the natural disposition of a human king? With the activation of his petrification martial pulse, his defense is comparable to the strongest demonic beast on the heavenly beast ranking. The surrounding people whispered with shocked gazes. All of them were staring at the purple-robed young man in the middle of the square. At that moment, could Du Xiaofu still fight against Su Chuyun, who had activated his petrification martial pulse? After all, Su Chuyun was a true human king. Du Xiaofu, I as a human king. I as a human king. You can't fight against me. Me. Of the stones of stone. Of stones, the huge stone. The stones Yan stone as. The stone of the stone of the giants S of stone. Of the of the zes like of the stone of the su'a of the rock of the giant, of his of the his giant. The runes on the huge stone man's body flashed and the pressure spread out. The surrounding onlookers with weaker strength could not even raise their heads. Du Xiaofu looked at the gigantic stone man in front of him. Its gigantic body towered above the square and it was almost the same as him in the air. The mighty pressure it gave off was indeed enough to cause one's heart to tremble. Petrification martial pulse? It doesn't seem weak. Du Xiaofu muttered. He had seen the sky serpent sex Lu Kuan's immortal martial pulse and Si Ruofeng's storm martial pulse. The petrification martial pulse on Su Chuyun's body was also extremely special. It made one unable to feel what kind of terrifying explosive power was contained in the huge stone man's body. Now let's see how you fight. In front of me, you'll have to crawl. The shout resounded in all directions of the square. After Su Chuyun was petrified, the huge stone man's fist, which was as big as a bowl, was covered in dazzling talisman formation. Instantly, it violently blasted towards Du Xiaofu with a terrifying force. Boom! The terrifying fist seemed to be able to shatter the space. It was enough to suppress and destroy everything. With a rumbling sound of thunder, it rushed towards Du Xiaofu like a falling meteorite. At the same time when Su Chuyun attacked, dazzling golden talisman formation bloomed around Du Xiaofu's body. His mouth was like a dragon's roar in the ninth heaven. At the same time, a loud shout like the trumpet of a divine elephant was heard. Boom! In a short moment, the sound of wind and thunder resounded like the sound of Sanskrit. An incomparably domineering fist print condensed in Du Xiaofu's hand, accompanied by an imperceptible trajectory and talisman formation fluctuation. Finally, like a collision of meteorites, it violently collided with the huge stone man's bull-like fist. Bang! Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, Du Xiaofu's domineering fist print was incomparably terrifying golden energy. It was like a shockwave in the void that rushed out in all directions. It directly blocked the huge stone man's fist in midair. The domineering aura looked down on everything. In a short moment, the domineering fist print suppressed all living things. A majestic golden light burst out and shattered the stone man's fist. Ka, the huge stone man's fist shattered. The majestic golden light burst out like a bomb. Then, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the huge stone man began to crumble inch by inch. It turned into broken talisman formation and dissipated. Like a turtle that had been stripped of its shell, Su Chuyun's body was revealed. Then her body was directly sent flying like a kite with a broken string. She flew for dozens of feet before landing heavily on the ground. At the same time, blood spurted out of her mouth like a fountain. Su Chuyun's body was dripping with blood. When she fell, the ground shook with a loud bang. If it wasn't for the talisman formation restriction in the square, it was likely that it would have cracked open. All around the square, there was a deathly silence. At this moment, many gazes were looking at the purple-robed young man in the low sky in astonishment. Just now, the purple-robed young man's punch was so domineering and powerful. Su Chuyun activated her petrification martial veins and displayed the talent of a human king. In the end, she was still severely injured by Du Xiaofu's punch. Gulp, gulp. After a short moment of silence, the surroundings were filled with the sound of saliva being swallowed. How terrifying was his strength to severely injure the petrified Su Chuyun with one punch. Originally, some people thought that Du Xiaofu was famous for defeating Yi Xian because of the spiritual talisman master's attack on the mind and soul. In the giant rock space, he had gathered hundreds of people to work together to severely injure the expert on the bronze list. In the end, when he fought against Dean Machin, he only relied on the talisman array to protect himself for 2 hours. But now, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, everyone saw that Su Chuyun, who was at the mysterious Martial King realm, was severely injured by one punch. Du Xiaofu's strength was so terrifying. Good job, Martial Uncle Du. Martial Uncle Du, Martial Uncle Du, Martial Uncle Du. Immediately, cheers sounded from the crowd. Such powerful strength immediately captured the hearts of many disciples. In the crowd, many female disciples' eyes began to shine. Many of their eyes began to ripple. What kind of martial skill did that kid use just now? It's too terrifying. I'm afraid it's not simple. That martial skill is not simple. I can't see through it. On the high platform, the elders and protectors could not help but whisper in shock. The martial skill that Du Xiaofu had just displayed was something that even these experienced and knowledgeable people like them, who believed that their eyesight was not bad, could not see through its origin and clues. Yu Wanli stood behind his master, Elder Gu Qingyang, and stared blankly at the square. After a while, he recovered from his shock. He was stunned and said softly, "Junior brother's strength is really terrifying. This kid, how can he be so strong? This is going to be troublesome." On the high platform, Elder Kong, Hao Zhongwei, Hu Songquan, Xiao Mingze and the other elders were shocked. When they thought of the elixirs and Dao weapons that they had bet on Elder Gu Qingyang, their faces instantly turned ugly. Su Chuyun, who was at the mysterious Martial King realm, could not withstand Du Xiaofu's punch after activating her petrification martial vein. With Du Xiaofu's strength, who could compete with him? Even Feng Xiangyu, Shu Yang and the others could not. The only one who could compete with him was that monster. However, as long as Du Xiaofu could enter the top 2, they would have already lost. If Du Xiaofu won first place, they would lose twice as much. This kid, where did he come from? How can he be so abnormal? Elder Hu Songquan cursed inwardly. Back in the testing area, this brat had stolen the limelight from his disciple, Feng Xiangyu, as well as a middle-grade Dao artifact. He had thought that he would be able to win the bet back this time. Who would have thought that he would be implicated and lose twice as much? Hee, good kid, good job. At this moment, only Elder Gu Qingyang was beaming with joy. He had been secretly worried for the past few days, but at this moment, he was completely at ease. What a strange martial skill. On the square, Sima Muhan's pale golden eyes had some ripples. As for Hao Guan, Mo Wen, Benyu, Xiao Yingmeng and the others, they were all dumbfounded and had yet to recover from the shock. Puchi, on the ground of the square, Su Chuyun spat out large mouthfuls of blood. He struggled several times before standing up. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, accompanied by his pale face and his blood-red eyes, revealed a ferocious expression. "This is impossible. How can this be? I can't lose. How can I lose to him?" With a ferocious expression, he muttered to himself. Su Chuyun's internal organs were all severely injured, especially his right arm. It hung limply and the bones were shattered. But at this moment, Su Chuyun did not seem to feel the pain in his body. He could not believe that he would be defeated by Du Xiaofu, and in such a straightforward manner. His human king talent, his petrification martial vein, in front of Du Xiaofu, could not even withstand a single blow. Rolling on the ground and begging for flowers, "Thank you all. Thank you." Chapter 655. However, Su Chuyun didn't seem to feel the pain in his body at all. He couldn't believe that he would be defeated by Du Xiaofu in such a straightforward manner. His human monarch's celestial disposition and petrification martial veins couldn't withstand a single blow from Du Xiaofu. "You've lost." Du Xiaofu looked at Su Chuyun with clear eyes. Some time ago, in the desolate ancient space, he had made a lot of progress in comprehending the mysterious move. The power of the mysterious move had also become more tyrannical. "This is impossible. Impossible. I can't lose to you." Su Chuyun looked at Du Xiaofu with hatred in his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot. He didn't know what was going on, but his blood seemed to be surging. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and spat out a big mouthful of blood. "Okay, the first round is over." On the high platform, Elder Hu Songkuan walked out. His voice, which contained profound energy, sounded in the ears of the surrounding spectators. Immediately, the whispers and shouts in the surroundings gradually subsided and slowly began to return to silence. Many people looked at Elder Hu Songkuan on the high platform. Their eyes were filled with awe and respect. Elder Hu Songkuan's position in the Manchu was definitely not weak. Among all the disciples, his popularity had always been quite good. Two men, who looked like deacons, came down and helped the sluggish and dispirited Su Chuyun down. Su Chuyun's eyes were dull and filled with hatred. He didn't struggle and let the two deacons help him down. At this time, he probably knew in his heart that he had lost and didn't have the strength to fight anymore. Looking at the disciples in the square, Elder Hu Songkuan said faintly, "The first round is over. The 16 of you can enter the Manchu's secret land to cultivate. Next, the first place among you will be able to obtain a high-grade Dao tool as a reward. At the same time, this is also a chance for you to prove yourselves." After a slight pause, Elder Hu Songkuan continued, "For the first place, the rules have changed slightly. It will be a duel by drawing lots. During the duel, you are not allowed to deliberately kill or entangle. Everything will be decided by the elder panel. Those who violate the rules will be severely punished. Do you understand?" "Understood." Everyone nodded, but in fact, everyone knew in their hearts that in the last 16 people, everyone's strength was almost the same. In this kind of competition, everyone would go all out, and the difference in strength between the two sides was not big, so it was inevitable that there would be problems when the time came, so everything depended on their own discretion. As soon as Elder Hu Songkuan finished speaking, a deacon of the sect brought out a black bamboo pot. There were many jade lots in it. "You can start drawing lots now. There are a total of black and white jade lots. The numbers on each jade lot are from 1 to 4. There are 2 number 1 jade lots in each of the black and white jade lots. Out of the 16 jade lots, there were 4 number 1 jade lots, for number 2 jade lots, for number 3 jade lots, and 4 number 4 jade lots. When the time comes, the 4 people who drew the same number will fight against the other people who drew the same number jade lots. In the next round, the 8 winners will continue to fight against the winners of the same number jade lots. When there are only 4 winners left, the 4 people who drew the same number jade lots will fight against each other. In the end, number 1 will fight against number 4, number 2 will fight against number 3, and the 2 winners will fight against each other for the first place." Elder Hu Songkuan's voice, which contained Xian Qi, echoed in the square. "Do you all understand? If there are no questions, the 16 of you can start drawing lots now." "Understood." Everyone nodded without any questions. It seemed that everyone already knew the rules of the competition. Du Xiaofu also did not find it hard to understand. This kind of duel by drawing lots was once and for all. It seemed complicated, but in fact, it was extremely simple. In the beginning, out of the 16 jade lots, there would be 4 number 1 jade lots, 2 black ones, and 2 white ones. In the first round, the ones who drew the 2 white number 1 jade lots would fight against each other, and the ones who drew the 2 black number 1 jade lots would fight against each other. In the end, the winners of the 2 white number 1 jade lots and the 2 black number 1 jade lots would fight against each other in the next round. It was the same for the ones who drew the number 2, number 3, and number 4 jade lots. In the end, there were only 4 people left, which were the 4 people with different jade lots. After that, it was time to fight for the first place and the second place. After everyone nodded in understanding, the drawing of lots began under the supervision of the deacons and protectors. At this time, the surrounding onlookers were whispering to each other and began to discuss who would take the first place in the end. For the surrounding onlookers, the ones with the highest voices were Sima Muhan, Du Xiaofu, and the other 3 Wang Tianzis. Among them, Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu's voices were the highest. After Du Xiaofu easily defeated Su Chuyun, it undoubtedly shocked the surrounding disciples of the ancient heaven sect. At this time, in the discussion, Du Xiaofu's voice was much louder than before, and it was even not below Sima Muhan's. After the 16 people finished drawing their lots, Du Xiaofu saw the jade lot in his hand. It was the black jade lot number 1. He glanced sideways and saw that Sima Muhan, who was not far from him, had a white jade slip with the number 2 written on it. This is bad luck. At this time, Judge Hao's voice suddenly sounded. He was holding a white number 1 jade lot in his hand. When he looked at the black no. 1 jade lot in Du Xiaofu's hand, his fat face suddenly turned ugly. Judge Hao was very clear that even if he won the first round, he would definitely meet Du Xiaofu in the next round. At that time, his fate could be imagined. It seems that there is someone who is more unlucky than me. Suddenly, Judge Hao looked at Mu Jiejie, who was beside him. When he saw the black number 1 jade lot in Mu Jiejie's hand, he immediately smiled. Sometimes people were like this. When they felt that their luck was bad, they would suddenly see someone with worse luck than them. They would immediately feel better in their heart. Judge Hao was like this. When he saw that Mu Jiejie, who was beside him, was going to meet Du Xiaofu in the first round, he immediately felt that his luck was actually quite good. After the drawing of lots, the 16 people reported their numbers. Immediately, many people looked dejected. For the 11 outstanding talents, if they were to encounter the 3 monarch talents, they would naturally be somewhat dejected. Mu Jiejie and another Wang Tianzi, one against Du Xiaofu, and the other against Sima Muhan, were even more dejected. Alright, the drawing of lots is over. Everyone will face off against their opponents. Elder Hu Songquan's gaze swept across the entire field. All the participants had finished drawing their lots. When he finished speaking, he saw that the 16 people had already found their opponents. He nodded slightly, and his voice, accompanied by profound energy, continued to reverberate in the field. He said, "Now the duel begins." When he finished speaking, there was a brief moment of silence in the surroundings. In the next moment, the 16 people stood in the field, ready to fight. Their swords were drawn, and their profound energy surged. Their gazes were vigilant as they looked at their opponents. I didn't expect that Mu Jiejie would actually meet Du Xiaofu. Her luck isn't too good. Qi Minghui's luck isn't that good either. In the midst of everyone's discussion, the 16 people in the field had already begun to fiercely collide with each other. Powerful, profound energy collided, accompanied by the flickering of runes, and a series of low-energy muffled sounds immediately rang out. Bang, 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 figures flickered, and practitioner weapons were waved. One by one, they directly entered the fierce battle. Most of the people's cultivation and strength were about the same. There was no need to probe, and they directly entered the fight. Perhaps they didn't have much hope for the first place, but to be able to fight with others, firstly, it was to test their strength, and secondly, they wanted to defeat their opponents. The higher their ranking, the higher their status and reputation in the Manchu. Therefore, they naturally had to give it their all. "President, I know that I can't win against you, but I still want to give it a try." Mu Jiejie looked at Du Xiaofu with a helpless expression. Du Xiaofu lightly smiled and said, "Let's do it." "All right, then I won't be polite." Mu Jiejie squeezed out a trace of a smile. Then, she formed a seal with her hands, and the energy in the air began to fluctuate, starting to condense into a talisman array. Du Xiaofu looked at Mu Jiejie with interest. He knew from his big brother, Zhen Qingchun, that a martial cultivator's spiritual vein spirit surpassed the 9th grade, and they were outstanding. For a spiritual talisman master, there were also differences in the strength of their spiritual veins, and there were also differences between outstanding people and kings. As an outstanding person, Mu Jiajia's spiritual vein spirit was outstanding. Boom! The surrounding space trembled, and around Mu Jiajia's graceful figure, the energy of heaven and earth was vigorous. Runes flashed, and in a short period of time, 22 array flags were condensed in her hand. Her complexion suddenly turned deathly pale. Walala, 22 array flags were thrown out from Mu Jiajia's hand. Instantly, 22 light pillars soared into the sky, and were about to form a huge array. Swish, 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 Du Xiaofu moved and the hand seals in his hand changed. Then, runes soared into the sky, and like lightning, they immediately blocked the 22 light pillars. The runes seemed to have some kind of special effect. As the runes flickered, they directly disintegrated the 22 rune light pillars into broken runes, which then turned into waves of energy that dissipated in the air. Puchi, Mu Jiajia spat out a mouthful of blood, and her originally pale complexion became even paler. Chapter 656. Dissolving the rune and breaking the formation directly. I didn't expect this kid's understanding of formations to be so strong. Among the elders and protectors on the high platform, a noble and dignified woman was shocked and couldn't help but exclaim. The other elders were all experienced and knowledgeable. They were naturally able to see through Du Xiaofu's method of directly dissolving the talisman array. They were even more able to understand how profound one's attainments in talisman arrays were to be able to accomplish this. That kid is really abnormal. His martial arts are so terrifying, but I didn't expect his understanding of formations to be so strong. Elder Chang Mingze was also very shocked. Hee. Elder Gu Qingyang was smiling. After so many years, this was the first time a disciple had made him proud. You have already used up a lot of your spiritual power. Although your spiritual power is enough to activate a 6-star mysterious formation, your understanding of formations is still lacking. If you forcefully set up a 6-star mysterious formation, even if you succeed, it will be very harmful to you. Next time, you must be careful not to set up a formation that you can't control. Otherwise, if you meet someone who is stronger than you in terms of formations, you will be heavily injured. Du Xiaofu looked at Mu Jiajia in front of him and handed her a medicinal pill. He said, "You didn't understand enough of the runes you laid down just now. When the time comes, you need to study them properly. If I didn't dissolve your runes just now, the price you would have to pay would be even greater than now." "Thank you, President. I understand." A smile appeared on Mu Jiajia's pale face as she nodded her head. She took the pill from Du Xiaofu's hand and unceremoniously stuffed it into her mouth. Ripples appeared in her bright eyes. After Du Xiaofu nodded, he looked around and met someone's gaze. The owner of the gaze had a pair of light purple eyes. It was Sima Muhan. At this moment, she had also defeated an outstanding opponent. Looking at Du Xiaofu with her purple eyes, Sima Muhan raised her eyebrows slightly. She glanced at Du Xiaofu and pouted slightly, as if provoking him. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. He didn't know how he had offended this little girl. Looking around, Du Xiaofu discovered that several people had already finished fighting. Xu Yang, Feng Xiangyu, and Shi Yunxing were all the victors. Mo Wen and Judge Hao also finished their battle. Each of them had won by a hair's breadth. They had activated their practitioner weapons and meridian spirits, but they had only won by a hair's breadth. Their faces were pale, and they had paid a heavy price. On the other hand, Running Bull had been defeated by Xu Yang. In the end, only Qiao Yingmeng and another genius were left to fight. The two were locked in a stalemate as Xian Qi surged in all directions. "Big brother, that man is called Dai Yang. He is also an outstanding talent. Who do you think will win between him and Qiao Yingmeng?" Judge Hao came to Du Xiaofu's side and asked Du Xiaofu as he watched the battle between Qiao Yingmeng and that extraordinary youth. Their cultivation and strength are similar, and their practitioner weapons are also similar. If we want to determine the winner, I'm afraid we'll have to see the final trump card. Du Xiaofu said to Judge Hao, who was beside him after watching the final battle between the two. The battle between the two had reached its climax. Qiao Yingmeng's attacks were quick and agile, like a cheetah. Dai Tsang Yang's attacks were extremely steady. His vigorous Xian Qi was endless, and his defense was watertight. As time passed, Qiao Yingmeng's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. One attack after another came in a spurt of energy. Her graceful figure drew an arc in the air as she continuously attacked Dai Tsang Yang. Dai Tsang Yang was still extremely steady under Qiao Yingmeng's continuous attacks. His vigorous Xian Qi defense didn't have the slightest bit of disorder or change in color. His expression was rather calm as he continuously defended against Qiao Yingmeng's fierce attacks. It seemed like he could only defend against Qiao Yingmeng's attacks, but he wasn't completely suppressed. Many disciples and the surrounding spectators were shouting the names of Qiao Yingmeng and Dai Tsang Yang. It seemed like the two had a lot of supporters in the Manchu. Qiao Yingmeng seems to be about to lose. Her attacks are too hasty and she's panicking. Once there's an opportunity, I'm afraid it'll be Dai Tsang Yang's strongest counterattack. Judge Hao seemed to have seen the situation and couldn't help but worry for Qiao Yingmeng. Not necessarily. It's hard to say who will win. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled. Golden Light Qiao Yingmeng's attacks were too hasty, but he was still biased towards Qiao Yingmeng. Boom. Not long after Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the fierce battle between the two suddenly changed. Dai Tsang Yang, who had been passively receiving Qiao Yingmeng's fierce attacks, suddenly burst out with an extremely fierce attack when Qiao Yingmeng made a mistake. His Xian Qi surged in his hand as runes erupted. A fierce palm print condensed and shot out like a thunderbolt, slapping towards Qiao Yingmeng as fast as lightning. Swish, an extremely powerful palm print swept out and instantly landed on Qiao Yingmeng's shoulder. At this time, Qiao Yingmeng's graceful figure was directly shattered by the powerful palm print, but no blood flowed out. Not good, it's an afterimage. Dai Tsang Yang's complexion abruptly changed. As if he had a premonition, his figure immediately retreated. Don't move. Otherwise, even if you don't die, you will be heavily injured. Almost at the same time, a delicate shout entered Dai Tsang Yang's ears. Then a curved blade practitioner weapon in the shape of a taiji diagram wrapped in dazzling and sharp practitioner inscriptions was placed against Dai Tsang Yang's neck from behind. Qiao Yingmeng's figure also appeared behind Dai Tsang Yang. Dai Tsang Yang's complexion was slightly sluggish. Then he bitterly smiled and said, "This blade can't take my life now, but if it was a life and death battle, you didn't need to remind me. Even if I didn't die, I would be heavily injured. I lost. What a good move to show weakness. My defeat is not unjust. You let me win." Qiao Yingmeng put away her curved blade practitioner weapon and retreated. Her sharp eyes revealed a smile. "Big brother, how did you know Qiao Yingmeng would win?" Seeing the result of the battle, Judge Hao was extremely shocked. He asked Du Xiaofu in astonishment. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled and said to Judge Hao, "Don't tell me you didn't see it." Although Qiao Yingmeng didn't show her strength in terms of speed, her performance in the giant rock space was much faster than now. She had been deliberately slowing down and showing flaws. She was only luring the enemy in and waiting for the final fatal blow. In the end, she succeeded. "You can even see that. You're really amazing." Judge Hao rolled his eyes at Du Xiaofu, but then his complexion turned ugly. He suddenly remembered that in the next round he would have to face Du Xiaofu. The outcome could be imagined. The first round of the 16-people competition had completely ended. In the end, Du Xiaofu, Sima Muhan, Xu Yang, Feng Xiangyu, Shi Yunxing, Mo Wen, Judge Hao and Qiao Yingmeng won. They're not weak at all. Compared to the previous batch, they're much stronger. On the high platform, an elder exclaimed in admiration. This year's inner sect disciples were, on average, much stronger than last year's inner sect disciples. The second round of the 8-people competition began again. In this round, Sima Muhan faced Shi Yunxing, Xu Yang faced Mo Wen, Feng Xiangyu faced Qiao Yingmeng, and as for Judge Hao, he naturally faced Du Xiaofu. Boom! Without the slightest warm-up, Xu Yang, Mo Wen, Feng Xiangyu, and Xiaoying Meng had already entered a fiery duel. Soon after, Shi Yunsheng also took the initiative to attack Sima Muhan. "You're not going to fight?" Du Xiaofu looked at the 6 people not far away who had already started fighting. The fiery battle immediately ignited the entire arena. He couldn't help but ask Judge Hao with a smile. "I can't beat you at all." Judge Hao said helplessly, "Didn't you say that you have to fight even if you can't beat me?" Du Xiaofu said with a smile, "Since you know you can't beat me, then you're just looking for a beating." Judge Hao was very helpless. If the difference in strength was just a little bit, then so be it. But the difference was too big. They weren't even on the same level. There was no way he could fight. He was just looking for a beating. "Then what do you want now?" Du Xiaofu was also very helpless at this moment. "I surrender. I'll let you save your strength to deal with others." Judge Hao was very clear in his heart. Since he couldn't beat him, it wasn't like he would lose to others. "Up to you." Du Xiaofu smiled and stood with his hands behind his back. He began to watch the fiery battle not far away from him. Chapter 657. Boom! Feng Xiangyu's fist was like a meteor and he punched out heavily. Feng Xiangyu punched Du Xiaofu with the force of a thunderbolt. The terrifying aura on his fist seemed to want to shatter the space. Unfettered steps. Just as the thunderous fist appeared in front of him, Du Xiaofu's purple robe fluttered in the wind. His figure drifted like a deity, changing unpredictably and instantly disappearing in front of the surging fist. The terrifying fist caused the space around him to ripple as if it was going to create a huge hole in the space around him. The vast amount of energy and force caused everyone's heart to palpitate. The runes were dazzling as they shot towards the sky. At the same time, as Du Xiaofu's figure disappeared, Feng Xiangyu suddenly looked up. His eyes were filled with fluctuations as if he had felt a terrifying aura. Walala, above Feng Xiangyu's figure, a dazzling golden light suddenly exploded. The golden light was like the sun as it shone brightly. At this moment, the dazzling light wreaked havoc in the sky. A domineering aura descended, causing the expressions of the elders on the high platform to change drastically. Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in the golden light. A pair of golden rune wings spread out from his back. A domineering aura erupted in the sky like a volcano, causing the sky to tremble and the clouds to churn. Rock descends to the 9 heavens. A shout that was low and deep like muffled thunder sounded out from Du Xiaofu's mouth, and then the talisman markings on his back flapped. The dazzling golden talisman markings were like a rain of light as they poured down from the sky and spread out like a rock soaring through the 9 heavens and traversing the 4 seas. Boom! The rock spread its wings and carried the domineering will of the golden rock. With an unparalleled aura, Feng Xiangyu was suppressed. Roar! Feng Xiangyu's red eyes shone brightly as he roared like a beast. His body was covered with runes and a terrifying aura erupted from his body. He wanted to break free from Du Xiaofu's suppression. However, under the suppression of the true golden-winged Great Peng, golden light filled the sky, and pressure filled the sky. No matter how hard Feng Xiangyu struggled, he was unable to break free from the suppression of the golden talisman. What a terrifying aura! The aura of the golden rock. Is this brat a human or a beast? On the high platform, the gazes of several elders suddenly trembled. At this moment, the domineering aura that erupted from Du Xiaofu's body was clearly the aura of a true golden-winged rock. A human who had comprehended the beast ability of the golden rock would definitely not be able to have such a powerful aura. It was as if the real golden rock's world. However, this brat was a human. What a terrifying aura! My meridian spirit. Is Du Xiaofu's aura the real golden rock? How can it be so terrifying? Among the dense crowd of onlookers, those with lower cultivation bases were all trembling, and their eyes were filled with shock. The meridian spirits in the spectators' bodies were uncontrollably affected. However, all the meridian spirits of the demonic beasts were suppressed by the aura. Do you feel it? Du Xiaofu's aura is only at the complete martial lord realm. It's too powerful. A complete martial king realm cultivator is able to contend with a martial king realm cultivator. Is this brat hiding his cultivation, or is he really that powerful? Some elders exclaimed. Du Xiaofu's cultivation was at the complete martial lord realm, but he was able to contend with a martial king realm cultivator like Feng Xiangyu. It was too shocking. Unable to contend against Du Xiaofu's great suppression, Feng Xiangyu roared like a wild beast. Mysterious symbols spread all over his body. After which, under the astonished gazes of the surrounding crowd, the mysterious symbols formed and arranged themselves in the air in front of him, causing his body to swell a little. He was like a wild beast overlooking the land from the sky, giving off a peerless pressure. Feng Xiangyu's roar shook the heavens and the surroundings. The mysterious runes on his body were dazzling. At this moment, his ferocious face was extremely shocking. Suppress. Golden light bloomed in the sky. Du Xiaofu fully activated rock descends to the 9 heavens. It was as if the real golden rock had descended, carrying the domineering will of the golden rock. It was as if the real golden rock had spread its wings. It was powerful and domineering. The domineering aura filled the sky and suppressed everything. Rumble. Such a collision sounded like thunder in the sky above the square. A series of dazzling runes burst out. Amidst the earth-shattering sound, the space seemed to be about to shatter. At the place where Feng Xiangyu was suppressed, one could clearly see the spatial energy rippling out like waves. The energy spread out in all directions. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was giving it his all as well. Using the comprehension of the golden-winged rock that he had gained in the barren ancient space, he suppressed Feng Xiangyu. No matter how Feng Xiangyu struggled, he was completely suppressed. On the high platform, all the elders and protectors were shocked. A complete martial lord realm cultivator was actually able to fight so fiercely with a mysterious martial king realm cultivator. How terrifying was that? Feng Xiangyu even had the upper hand. TSK. In the vast golden light, Feng Xiangyu was gradually suppressed. Du Xiaofu's figure then floated in front of Feng Xiangyu in a domineering manner. The light golden runes surged and Du Xiaofu's body was enveloped in a golden halo. As the runes surged, it was as if a golden rock was about to rush out from the halo. The berserk martial vein is indeed very strong. However, you still lost. Du Xiaofu's words were calm yet domineering. He waved his hand and golden talisman runes flew out. They were densely packed and stacked on top of each other. It was as if a golden-winged rock had spread its wings and directly engulfed Feng Xiangyu. Walala, an extremely domineering aura erupted and the energy impacted the surrounding space. The space trembled and Feng Xiangyu's body was immediately sent flying. He only stabilized his body after flying for a few dozen feet. A mouthful of blood spurted out from Feng Xiangyu's mouth. The runes on his body suddenly cracked and shattered. His face turned as pale as ash. His swollen body returned to its original state and his aura began to weaken. Du Xiaofu won and entered the top 2. Many of the elders and protectors on the high platform were shocked, but they also felt a little helpless. Feng Xiangyu had already lost. It was obvious that he was no match for Du Xiaofu. Half a month ago, many elders and protectors had placed bets on Dao weapons and royal-grade elixirs. They had already lost. Where did this brat come from? He's too abnormal. Elder Hao Zhongwei sighed helplessly. Back then he had instigated everyone to place their bets. Who knew that Du Xiaofu was actually so abnormal? Sigh. Elder Qian Mingze, Elder Hu Sangqun, and the others looked at each other and sighed. To them, they already knew of Du Xiaofu's strength. However, when they heard that Si Ruofeng and the other fellows on the bronze list would find trouble with Du Xiaofu in the giant rock space, they couldn't help but place their bets. Who knew that Yin Mochen couldn't do anything to Du Xiaofu in the giant rock space? At this point, it was too late for them to regret. Little junior brother, well done. Yu Wanli wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and a smile appeared on his face. After defeating Feng Xiangyu, not only would his master not go bankrupt, but he would also be able to earn a huge sum of money. Quick, hand over your bets. None of you can escape. Don't think of reneging on your bets. Otherwise, I won't let you off. Elder Gu Qingyang's old face was like a blooming sunflower as he began to collect his bets. This time he had won a lot of bets. It was definitely a big win. Some elders looked pained. However, they knew that they couldn't renege on their bets except for Elder Gu Qingyang. In the end, they had no choice but to hand over their bets to Elder Gu Qingyang. Elder Hu Songquan, Elder Qiao Mingze, Elder Hao Zhongwei and the others could only helplessly take out their Dao artifacts and king-grade medicinal pills. Their faces were also filled with pain. Hu Songquan, your disciple is really disappointing. Elder Hao Zhongwei couldn't help but roll his eyes at Elder Hu Songquan. Elder Hu Songquan also rolled his eyes at Elder Hao Zhongwei and snorted, "If your disciple isn't disappointing, then let your disciple try. I never thought that the president would be so powerful." At the edge of the square, Qiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, Mu Jiejie, Mo Wen, and the others stood together. At this moment, their eyes were filled with shock. You won't be proud for long. So what if you're strong among the new inner sect disciples? In the crowd, Zhou Yinger's eyes were cold when she saw that Du Xiaofu had defeated Feng Xiangyu. You won, I lost. I'm indeed inferior to you. On the square, Feng Xiangyu stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his black sleeves. He looked at Du Xiaofu and there was a hint of loneliness in his pure black eyes. Feng Xiangyu knew that he had lost. He was a martial king, but he couldn't defeat his opponent, who was a martial marquis. The berserk martial vein is indeed powerful. It's just that I have some special means. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to suppress you. Du Xiaofu said to Feng Xiangyu. The berserk martial vein was indeed powerful. Du Xiaofu knew that the terrifying power from before was enough to boil the blood in his body and cause his blood vessels to explode. He couldn't resist it at all. If it wasn't for his strong physical defense, he wouldn't have been able to resist Feng Xiangyu's berserk martial vein. The berserk martial vein was also extremely domineering, but the golden-winged great rock cultivation technique that he cultivated was even more domineering. If it wasn't for the fact that the two of them countered each other, Du Xiaofu guessed that he would have to go all out to suppress Feng Xiangyu. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.